just kind of chill for a bit. So how was Masters? So how was Masters? Were you forced to completely just make fun of Frog every time you went up there? I know that he wasn't doing so hot.
No, I mean, Masters went fine. I didn't really have any worries with these guys because, you know, we worked with Frog for, I think it was Salt, and then Dimes has been out there for an event already. AJ, I've worked with him plenty of times in the past between SCC. He did desk work for SPL whenever he was coaching SPL at one point. So just about everybody's had some kind of experience there. So we didn't really have to do too much. I'm hearing an echo from something.
I am muted. I don't know how long I've been muted for, but thank you for pointing that out for me.
Yeah, I was hearing like an echo on mine, and then I didn't hear anything after I stopped talking from you, so I guess you've been muted for at least from that little bit.
Well, better to figure it out now than after we've already gotten started. Let's go, indeed. So JMac, while we wait for people to trickle in here, we've got about 4 or 5 people already. Do you want to just give a brief introduction, like who you are, how you got into SMITE, how long you've been doing it for, just in case there's anybody that isn't familiar with you or would be encountering you for the first time?
Sure. I mean, if this is the first time you've done SMITE Esports, then hi, I'm JMac Tucker. I usually just go by JMac for short because nobody ever really throws on the full tacked in there. I am a caster for the SMITE Pro League. I've been doing this for about 2 years now at the Pro League level, and I was doing SCC for about 2 years and a half before I jumped up to SPL, and then I also did the Collegiate League starting all the way back in, oh god, when was that? Like spring 2016, I think, is when I've started. So god, I've been at this now for 7.5 years and I still suck. Oh boy, that don't look too good for me. No, I started casting one day just because I was watching the Pro League stuff. I was watching the World Championships. I was like, man, that looks really cool. I don't have the time investment to be a good enough player to ever get to that point in time. So I was already kind of doing some YouTube stuff at that point. I was playing Pokemon with a bunch of friends, and we were just uploading that stuff to YouTube. So I'm like, hey, this is the next logical, step, the next little leap up as I go from doing YouTube Let's Plays to doing commentary for other stuff, because I figured it kind of fell into the same boat. So I got a buddy of mine, said, hey, I want somebody to help practice with, even if you don't want to do it, just be there as like a second person, whatnot. And started doing commentary, jumped into Collegiate almost immediately, did that for about 3 or 4 years before I jumped up to SCC stuff. Actually had interviewed with Hindu Man about a potential position at High Res to do actual SPL, but got turned down because I was a play-by-play caster and they needed an analyst, more like a chair 2 style of role.
Yep.
And that's when, actually, that's the year that Mifflin got hired on, was that year that we initially interviewed. So instead of jumping to SPL, he approached me and said, hey, well, why don't we start the SCC, the Challenger Circuit? We're looking, while we don't have time to do it in-house right now, we would like to give you and some amateur talent some opportunity to kind of cast that. And so I talked with him, and I brought in a few people from there. We brought Blazy, we brought Alpha Jackal, Fuzzy Wuzzy was one of the people that we brought on initially. And then I think for a brief time, we also had Lermy, and at one point we had Kiki, Kiki So Cheeky, jumped in. And then over the course of that time, obviously new faces started cycling in and out from people who either had to move on and do other stuff. And then I cycled out, and then even more new faces were brought in. We passed the reins over to Blazy at that point. And then Blazy brought his new faces in. And this season we got all new talent kind of cycling in and out there as well. So we left it in good hands, and then to keep continuing to leave it into, more and more hands as it kind of goes on. I think it's actually the largest of the SEC amateur talent pool that we had, because I think I think when I was doing the invoicing for this last one, we had like 10 or 11 people all submit stuff to me. I'm like, bro, we had like
Where are you all
5 people.
coming
I
from?
was like, we had like 5 people when we did this because we had just Jithan doing the production end, and then it
Yeah.
was me and then like 3 to 4 other people, and now it's grown to as large as it is now. So it's definitely gotten much bigger, and the talent has also really stepped up over the course of the years. I mean, you wouldn't believe that these guys maybe are either somewhat fresh, have only been doing this for 6 months to a year, or some of them maybe even brand new at this one. So it's been a nice little journey up into the SPL. So I have the more traditional story for commentators, which is like, you kind of wanted to do it, you start doing it at a low end, you slowly build your way and climb up the ladder, and then eventually you make it to SPL. So that's kind of my story through.
Yeah, I'm hot on your heels, JMac. I'm working my way up there as quick as I can. Smite Central JMac went hard, says Anthony Mountain. Is that a throwback for you? You want to tell us about that?
Smite Central. Oh boy, that was that. I jumped into Smite Central when I was doing AVGL stuff. And that was when Jithan was still kind of leading Smite Central. He was kind of like the main guy doing that. And then he obviously started Smite Prime, and I kind of jumped over with him still doing that in collegiate. So that was, yeah, those were early days me. And I would not say that those went hard. that was when I'm using like a blue snowball as my microphone. It at best, maybe. Like, I did not have good equipment at that time, so I sounded awful. I felt like I was really good, and then I hear myself back. I'm like, you want to put that on a reel? I don't know about that one.
I don't know about that, Chief.
I don't know about that one. But yeah, that was kind of like part of like the origin day as well, was, you know, when I was doing Smite Prime, Smite Central. Those were kind of like collegiate was like my first, and then that was like my secondary kind of place whenever I had time to do so.
And now you're all grown up, and you casted at Worlds. And I was telling Gore last week, I think your Worlds cast, like I think it was a semifinals or something, was some of the best Worlds casting I've ever heard. Like, your voice carried so well and had so much weight to it every time you were talking. I was thoroughly impressed and loved every second of it. I don't think I've gotten to tell you that until now, but you knocked it out of the park, my man.
I appreciate that. I mean, part of the benefit of like a world stage like that one, you know, where we have all the speakers throughout, we have the whole crowd hyping up, is I'll be honest, like, my set kind of sucked. Like, if we're being honest and we're looking back and we're watching those games reeked. Those were some of the most boring, nothing is happening kind of games for like the first 20 minutes. There ain't nothing happening. And I think that went so far as to why the crowd was having fun going for Totem of Coups and buffs. Baby. Like, when you hear the coup buffs and then you hear everybody getting upset whenever we pan away from another buff, we kind of get to play along with the audience, and that makes it so much easier for those kinds of games. Like, if we go back and watch a Masters game where nothing is happening for the first 20 minutes, we don't have anything to lean on. We just have me and the dude sitting next to me to kind of talk over that kind of thing. But when nothing's happening for 20 minutes and we got 1,500 people in the audience behind us all shouting and going crazy over every tiny thing, makes it a lot easier, and it makes the pacing go a little bit differently. Also, just as like I don't want to say like a general rule of thumb, but like, a lot of times when you get to events like that, you definitely put on much more of a show. You get a little bit more verbose. You get a little bit more grandiose with everything that you're saying and doing. You put a lot more emphasis on things because, like, you're there, you're hyped up with the crowd. It's Worlds. You have at absolute most, like for Dave, he had like 3 sets the entire weekend, if even that. I had 2. So I'm like, well, this is my last set. It's going all 5. I'm just going to throw everything at it because I don't need to do anything tomorrow.
My
so
voice
I'm just
can
going
be
to
gone.
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea, is like knowing how to kind of pace yourself and knowing when you need to give it all, you know, when you need to jump up to that 10, when you need to sit at that resting like 7 or 8 kind of thing. Worlds is on your average, like your lowest that you're starting is like at a 6, and by the like middle of game you're ramped up to like an 8.
Yeah.
And then like you're just slamming 10s whenever any kind of action happens, especially when there's like nothing going on. Like, you're slamming those 9s and 10s when anything is happening there. And it's just a lot of like momentum and pacing kind of things. Like, even for this Masters weekend, like, first couple of days, there's no elimination on the line. I'm probably not going to be slamming 10s on everything, except for like maybe 1 or 2 fights at most during a game. Other than that, I'm going to be kind of sitting at the like 7, 8, maybe hit up a 9 every so often. especially because there's no elimination. No team's going
Right.
home. Like nobody's leaving on day number 1. But when we get to the elimination games, when things start getting a little bit more intense, the weekend's drawn out, the stakes get higher, you start seeing SCC versus SPL. You're really kind of crank it up for those kinds of games. Like that's where a lot of the fun really kicks in, is when you get to have like the quote unquote underdogs kind of fighting up against the SPL teams there. And even when you see that a game and a set is really kind of already trending downhill at that point, you still can't just be like, all right, well, Mambo's already kind of winning. Oh, Gladiators can't do anything. Oh no, what do? We, how do we make this interesting? Because they're just kind of getting thrashed or whatnot. So it's always knowing that, like, in these kinds of events, even if a game is going poorly, and it's something that I was guilty of, at least in like my first year of casting, which was when you know that you're walking into what we call, just a bad set. And it's not because of the game state or anything like that itself. It's just because, like, for example, let's say I walk into like season 9 Kings versus like beginning of season 9, like Valkyries. Like we're talking like, and like, let's say we're talking like the world champion level Kings versus like early stage season 9 Valkyries. We know that game isn't going to do anything. When the Kings are winning like 12-1 in kills at 25 minutes, you get into game number 2 and you're like, wow, that was kind of a trouncing. I don't think the Valkyries can do anything. You get into game 2 and you're like, oh, they can't. So you kind of fall into like a trap of like, well, we know this is a bad set. We know there's no real chance. Maybe we just kind of take it easy, take it a little bit light, and you kind of get out of the groove a little bit. Not a great thing to do, being honest. It kind of hurts your commentary a little bit. So it's one thing I've been working on over the course of this year, was not having those kind of slump games. I've had some of them just from having long weekends and whatnot. Like playoffs, there was only 4 of us there for playoffs. So we're on every single set for 4 days, best of 5s every single day, 2 of them. So you kind of get a little tired by the end of them, but it's all just sound to pacing and making sure you kind of understand, and then kind of keeping the stakes up there, and kind of just recognizing, even though this may not be the best game to be watching right now, this may not be the best team squaring off, making sure you keep that same level of energy and kind of keep that same, more than anything, kind of that same level of respect to the players and the viewers over anything. Because like the viewers already kind of know, they're like, oh, this is a 1-8 team versus a 10-0 team kind of thing. Like we know the 1-8 doesn't really stand a chance here. But you get those rare off chance moments, like the Gladiators versus the Kings, where it's like, Kings are 4-0. They kind of just been winning. And all the Gladiators, they haven't been doing anything. And then all of a sudden, the Gladiators win. And you're like, well, this isn't what we expected. And it kind of ramps the stakes back up. So it's more of anything, the way that I see it, kind of just a respect thing, is you go into every single game basically imagining that this is the number 1 and 2 team fighting every single time. And it really does kind of help your mindset and your logic there. Where, yes, you may know that this is the number 2 and number 7 team, and there's probably not a snowball's chance in hell the 7 is going to beat the 2. But if you treat it with that same level of respect, that this is the 1 and 2, or this is the 4 and 5 team, that there is something on the line, even where there isn't, it kind of helps you mentally have a little bit more kind of emphasis towards the game, and really keeps you going through with the set.
Yeah, and when Hindu was here for week 2, he talked to us a lot about the preaching the underdog story, when you can tell that a set is going pretty much in one direction, because worst case scenario, you already know that they were the underdog and they lose anyway, and that's fine. Best case scenario, you've spent the entire set, the entire game, the entire team fight, whatever, hyping up to the highest point, and then you have the perfect setup for that eventual payoff.
Yep. That's why for me, the Titans, getting to cast both of the Titan sets was actually a huge pleasure for me at Worlds, because then I got to run their story the entire way through Worlds. Was like, yeah, this team kind of just like barely made it here. They weren't really expected to do much because they lost their jungler, had to get a new one. They dropped their ADC, had to get a different one. They haven't really done much. This is, the Leviathans, the former world champions. These guys have been killing it. These guys are, lights out right now. This is like probably the expected team to make it to finals. Oh, the Leviathans just got 2-0'd? Oh, okay. We got a match here. Then we throw the Titans up against the Dragons. Like, the Titans weren't even supposed to be here. This is a team that was probably maybe not even going to make Worlds for a moment there with the performances that they were having. And all of a sudden, now we're going to Game 5 against the Dragons in a World semifinal. So, yeah, preaching the underdog story is definitely a good way to go about it. It keeps you away from that slump of, wow, this is just the bad team of the league. They haven't done anything. They've looked bad. always try and find the high points of a team that's doing bad. That way you can try and pick those high points, and when they succeed through those, you can say, and this is what we've been talking about. This is a team that's really great on these siege defenses. They're able to capitalize off it. You think back to season like season 6, season 7 SK, the team that would go 15 to 20,000 gold down and just be better at siege defenses than any other team in the league. They get one good defense and then win the game off of it.
Was
like
the Paul SK or the Zapman SK?
That was the Zap. Well, I mean, Zap and Paul were both on the SK at that point. No, that's season six.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's season
I couldn't
6,
remember
7.
which one, but that makes a lot more sense then.
Yeah, so whenever you can just find even those high points, and that was the high point I was preaching, like with the Gladiators. This is a really strong early game team. They like to get involved early. They like to get active. Kirby really likes to be the facilitator. And then if we do end up getting to these later stages, their team might not be the strongest, but they have really good siege defense. They know how to either draft a composition or kind of change themselves and shift gears to being able to go into these strong defenses. That way, when they do have some really good defense, and this is what we've been harping on, this is what we've been talking about this team, they might know that they draft an early game comp that works really well. And if they fall behind early, they have a good thing in the late game where they can defend kind of thing. And it's really helped, at least in this season, being able to kind of pull those. Obviously, I've had a couple of bad moments where I harp on the negatives more than anything. Mm-hmm. But then we look over towards the positives and we say, well, if they can fix this one negative, this will make them a really good team. It's something we did with the Ferrymen. We said the Ferrymen are really good. This is a Paul team, an Aurora team, a Cyclone team, a Baskin team. The one problem that we're seeing is that Sino's not doing good work right now. He's not putting out good games on these weird picks that he's doing. This Nike of the Sur is not looking great. If you throw him on what he's worked with the past, his Eset, his Thanatos, his Naja, you get him on those picks, this guy can absolutely dominate and carry through the jungle. And so we would say all the time, that's what we're missing from the Ferryman. We just need Sino to find that one pick that really, really works, that's more traditional, and this team can absolutely excel. And once he started going with those kinds of picks, the 6 Ferryman started doing really good. And he even came on to an interview at one point and said, yeah, these are picks that I thought was doing really good, whether that be in scrims, from his ranked games. He said, these are picks that I believed were good, but we weren't seeing the results in competitive, so I had to make the mental shift up. So you can always kind of preach on the one negative, but it's always good to what we do, call it the compliment sandwich. Like, this is a really good team. They're really good at their early game. They might have a bit of a mediocre team fight, but once we get past the team fighting stage, when we get to these defenses, they're really strong. As you say, they're good early, they struggle, and then they're really good here kind of thing. And that's always kind of the way that you approach negativities on a team, is you sandwich those with the positives of the team.
Because you don't want to just sit there and you said, harp on them, but you do need to make sure the audience is aware. Hey, we're not just going to talk up these guys. There are stuff going on, but we can't just focus on that.
Yeah, you don't want to harp on the negativity as much. I've been guilty of doing it one time so far this season where I really harped on a negative point, and I got back home after that and I went, "Wow, that was bad." And I even went on Twitter and put an apology. I'm like, "Look, that was a bad death segment by me, and if it felt like I stepped on any toes, I apologize." It was just a really bad death segment for me. It wasn't my cast; it was my death segment. I'm like, that was a really bad death segment by me. Probably my worst one I think I've ever had, even since I joined the SPL. And I was like, I apologize for that one, because you never want to harp on the negative. You want to find the good things.
Yep.
And really, especially the in-between death segments. In the cast, you might be a little bit more harsh, but when you get to the actual desk, you leave the negativity behind. You jump back on the positive, especially if you're talking about the winning team and the positive things that they had done. You don't want to harp on the bad things that they did. You might mention it. You say, yeah, it wasn't an easy game for them. They did really well here. It was kind of, bad around this moment out there, but they were able to pull themselves back together and step up towards the end stage of the game. So never harp too much on the negative, especially on death segments.
All right. Well, JMac, I think we've gotten long enough here. I don't want to end up blazing the midnight oil for too long, so I think we should jump into this. So we've got, I think, both of our Chair 1 and our Chair 2 in the chat right now. Chair 1's name is Gear Chief, and Chair 2's name is Ken in this set. And by the way, okay. I think that you can see this screen. I love the SMITE Draft League, the overlay or whatever they have here, where it looks like they're behind the desk. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a unique take. I've done similar things in the past, but we haven't really hit it like this. So it's kind of unique, I will say.
We do have Gear Chief and Ken in here, so let's go ahead and jump in. If you want me to pause, just let me know and I can throw a pause up, and then we can talk about anything that you feel to be pertinent.
Yeah. If you do you know what the stakes of the set they're playing is? That this set is being played. Is this like a regular league game? Is this like a playoff kind of a game?
I do not know, but they're both in chat, so I'm sure
Hello
that
and welcome to our Scouting Grounds STL.
We'll just give it a second for them to let us
I'm
know.
Gear here,
Yeah.
Newcasters Who This, and with me I got your fellow Loki mid degenerate Akamaru, or as I like to call him,
Scouting
Ken.
Grounds game. So this is pre-season draft league where you're like basically seeing who the players are and who you want to draft.
Okay, gotcha.
Ken, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I love how you keep bringing it up every time. It's got to be the standard now. I'm the Loki mid guy. It happened once, for context, in season 2 of Scouting Grounds, and I haven't lived it down since. Gear hates me.
It was something to see. I'll give you that. But for these picks and bans, I gotta say, with the solo lane, I'm kind of excited to see because it's gonna be all aggression with both KA and Kakulin. They both have two different kits, so I'm excited to see how they use that. But all in all, you're seeing these teams. What do you see? Who do you want to see really push early? Do you want to see one team be reserved? What are we looking for as we're coming into this?
Starting with the order side over here, Toaster Strudels. By the way, great name. We see a lot of really great team fight presence coming from this team. We have that ultimate from Terra, and through the Cosmos from the Ratatosker, creating a lot of space for these guys. Solo kill in mid though. Okay.
Solo kill in mid. We got Zhang Kui getting that really quick kill. Kill Cam Kenny. That's gonna be so much fun. Killing Fuego My Ego, kind of keeping it with this breakfast foods thing. But we got a nice first blood kill for Zhang Kui to really start this game off.
Just a little pause.
Yeah.
No real fault to the casters for missing the first blood there. Even the spectators, sometimes you just have random kills that happen through introductions. First time introducing. I don't really have too much on there. You don't really have to go too much into depth whenever it comes to like your initial introductions. If it's your first time jumping through, no big deal. Kind of gives yourself at least a little bit of rep knowledge, saying, "Hey, how in the world do you know me? Oh, I'm the guy who does this kind of stuff through and whatnot." I do feel that in the chair 1 position, this early game is always, as a chair 1, whenever you jump in, and it's something that that I always have to do whenever we jump into a draft and then jump into like a game number 1 setting of something like this, is figuring out what your first talking point is going to be. You look over at the draft, and as the draft is happening, you see something either kind of catch your eye, you listen to what the desk had initially mentioned, or you just kind of look across the board, look down the screen as you're talking, looking at the items that are presented before you, and you find that first thing that really catches your eye, that first thing that catches your moment, and that should be your opening bit to open up to your chair 2, because usually in the early game, nothing's going to happen. Nobody's really going to try and fight. You might have like a mid 2v2 like we had here, kind of breakout, but you want to find that first point that you want to talk about. So the first thing that got mentioned there was the King Arthur and the Kakulin, and then it kind of got shied away from to then talk about what do you want to see from the two teams. I think starting with King Arthur versus Kakulin is a good point. My immediate personal one is I see a tier support and a Zhang Kui mid.
Yeah.
Those are the two biggest oddball things to me on this draft, and I'm probably going to start with one, especially with probably for me, the Zhang Kui is the easy one to start with, considering you have Zhang Kui Rat versus a double mage mid. That's probably where I at least start my opening conversation piece, and that can then help your spectator maybe try and push over towards the early, because one thing at least maybe at the amateur level, this is something that I've learned over the course of time, is that while the spectator helps to guide you to places, especially when there's nothing going on, there's no downtime, you as the caster should be helping the spectator also push the conversation across. So if nothing's happening in solo lane, which usually nothing happens, at least in the first 5 levels until that jungle makes that first rotation over, you probably never need to actually pan over and discuss the solo laners unless it's a very odd style of pick. If there's let's say it was Zhang Kui solo, then you have the conversation there, say, hey, this is solo. We haven't seen Zhang Kui in there over, what's he going to provide to this team as a solo laner? So I think the most important thing for your chair one, when you're first jumping into a game, you do fast introductions. You say, "My name is so and so. Joined with me is so and so as well. We're gonna be here for game number 1 of toaster strudels versus honey buns." And immediately, right now, Ken, I'm looking at these two compositions. I'm seeing out of mid something that we don't get to see very often. Jean Kui drafted up. Haven't seen him in quite some time. What are your thoughts on the Jean Kui, not only as a mid laner, but what can he really bring to this team composition as a whole? That gives your chair 2 plenty of time to set up, and now the action is more focused towards the Jean Kui. Obviously, hindsight's 50-50 seeing that there's a first blood happen there, but it helps your spectator know, okay, cool, this Jean Kui is a good talking point. We'll stick over here and see what happens. And then once that point has gone through, oh, you have the first blood. Here's what happened. If you had immediately got to see the action, then they can kind of break down exactly what had happened. You give the play-by-play of it. Hey, here's what happened. Here's what allowed them to get that first blood. And then now you can ask even so, okay, so now that, Jean Kui has first blood, what does this do inside this lane, especially for the Poseidon, who's now maybe going to fall behind the Ratatosker kind of a thing. It's all about conversation pieces to go through. But I think as chair 1, your strongest start is by having an immediate talking point and something you can ask within, I would say, that first 25, 30 seconds. Like, you don't want to go on for more than like 20 seconds or so at the beginning, whether that be because the first blood's going to happen. You guys kind of spawned in a little late, like right as the buffs came in, so you have a little less time for that talk. Like in SPL, we spawn in like a minute, like right at like the minute mark or something like that before it goes through. So we have like all of this downtime to kind of ramp into something. But having that first talking point is big. And then it really sets up for your analyst to have an immediate strong starting point in the beginning as well. Because that's really where a lot of like early impressions come from, is what do you have to offer right away? Then what do you have as the game goes through? How do the team fights go down? I can also tell there's a lot of nervousness between the two, a little bit of just vocal stumblings. Natural, happens. Everybody's going to do it, especially if you're new to it. You're unsure of exactly what you want to do. But that's my immediate advice for the both, is to have your talking point as a chair 1, what you want to open the door with, and then that gives your chair 2 time to set that one up. That thing gives you as a chair 1 time to be watching what's going on the map, seeing what action is taking place. If you happen to catch that first blood, cool, you got the first blood. Now you have your chair 2 can talk about that, and you can just keep going with talking points. So just having kind of a metaphorical bag next to you that you can always kind of pull out and really have discussion and talking points through, because you're going to hit points in games where nothing is going on for 5 to 10 minutes. And you're going to be like, well, there's no objectives being done and there's no kills being done. So what do we talk about? So at least for the first couple of minutes, I know I've gone on for a while on it, but at least for the first couple of minutes,
keep going, man.
For these first couple, having that strong opening discussion point. And I would even say for your chair 2, having your first opening 2 to 3 discussion points that you want to have. You look at this comp, you say, okay, he might ask me about the Jean Kui. I really want to talk about this tier. And you can definitely talk about the tier, mention the Jean Kui, what it can bring. And if nothing's happening by the time that you finish that point, you can then start to kind of transition over and say, okay, yeah, this Jean Kui is going to do this. But in a similar vein, the Jean Kui might actually be a good pick into this random tier support that we're now seeing, because Jean Kui has knock-up immunity. He's not going to be able to be fearless by this tier. So as long as Jean Kui's got his eyes active, he'll be able to really just kind of stop anything that this, frontline support wants to do. This Cullen's not going to be able to do too much to him either. So you have ways to kind of transition your talking points through. If kills happen, then you can talk about the kill. What does the kill now do for you on the map? What does it allow you to do? At minute 1 in the game, First Blood's really not going to do anything for you. You might get like a mid-harpy camp, but you're not going to be able to do a buff invade. You're not going to be able to go over to one side or the other of the map and go for another kill in another lane. So that's kind of just my immediate advice for new ones is, first off, have fun. Obviously, that's always number one thing. Definitely have fun. Take your time, slow down, and think about what you want to say a little bit before you say it. Something might happen to interrupt it, and you might have had a really good point you wanted to bring up, but sometimes you just got to leave it behind. I've been guilty of that, where I have something I want to say. I see something happen. I'm like, I want to mention this. I want to mention this. And then a team fight happens. I pass it off. My analyst does the breakdown of the team fight. He gets in his next point, and then something else happens. And then we have to break that down and talk a little bit later. And I never got to talk about that talking point but it might just become irrelevant at that point. So I just got to let it kind of sometimes let it go. Or there might be a moment that brings it back later. I think say, well, this is something I want to talk about at the beginning of the game, but we never got a chance to. Now that we saw that this has happened, hey, let's actually talk about it real quick. So the bag of tricks, or I guess the bag of discussion points, is something to have through. And it's a tough thing to do, especially when you're starting out, is because like your eyes are almost always glued to what's happening in front of you. Sometimes you'll look down and see items that might catch your interest. So you look over left or right and you say, oh, well, there's, these 4 people have an ultimate. These 4 people have an ultimate. Maybe we see a team fight. Maybe we don't. For me as a play-by-play caster, until I see that something massive is about to start immediately on the screen, or unless something catches my eye as to what's happening in the center of my screen, a lot of my attention is actually focused to the top right where the mini map is, the right and left side where the diamonds are, what buffs are up, and especially down at the items looking at relics, because I'm looking over here and saying, okay, there's a Poseidon with, let's say this Poseidon had his beads on cooldown and it's level 3 in the game. I'm going to look and go, yeah, this Poseidon's probably going to go nowhere near this Ratatosker for the next 2.5 minutes. So I doubt we're ever going to see Fuego fighting against Tantalus or anything like that. So probably just imagine him to be farming for the next 2 or 3 minutes of the game. Oh, and Hunter's also missing his bead. So he's probably not going to want to do any fighting against a Jean-Qui Ratatosker. Expect him to sit under tier 1 tower. So watching those, but especially like when it's the downtime for the tier 1 caster, always be looking at the minimap if you can. Not always, but definitely be checking the minimap every so often.
Definitely.
Because right now I can see Poseidon and Ratatosker. They're both on the right side of the jungle. We could see a rotation over towards right. And so I might try and pivot my conversation that way. Because if both of them are going to head right, King Arthur's got an advantage in lane. You can already see that's Cucullin sitting under tower. Probably not going to see this Ratatosker make a dive unless you see this King Arthur then allow this Cucullin to leave tower line. Poseidon's got an easy gank target if he gets over there, level 5 as well. So watching the minimap will really help the tier 1 be able to get potential discussion points and kind of pace dictating through the game. And for your tier 2, if they have some downtime, they're thinking of what they want to say. They want to figure out what their next kind of talking point is. But if they can glance over at minimap, they can be like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it would be great if this Jean-Qui could get active, but he's all the way back at base right now. Their mid laner's already pushing over to Gold Fury, so probably going to see somebody start to make a push that way. So, I guess first 2 pieces of advice is have openings ready for what you want to talk about, and then as the game progresses through, spend less time in the immediate center of the screen and more towards the sides and the outskirts of the screen.
You I'm not muted. Good. You hit 2 of the points that I was going to bring up, actually. One of them, a much more surface level thing that's very easy to implement. I always tell people who are just starting out, especially tier 1s, because you are the ones who, when the game comes in, you're the first person talking. A lot of the default people, or excuse me, the default intro for a lot of people is, I'm blah, 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 how are you doing today? And I feel like that you get stuck in minutia doing that a lot. So I typically tell, especially newer tier 1s, if you don't have anything planned, just introduce yourself, say, I'm Kaizo, I'm joined here by JMac, and we're going to blah, blah, blah. Just keep going, and then you don't have to immediately let the other person start talking, just immediately go into the discussion, and then you can use that as your introduction. And then I was also going to point out the thing about your eyes should generally not be in the middle of the screen unless there's actively a team fight going on. Especially if you are not the guy talking, you should be looking at the mini-map probably 60 or 70% of the time, and then most of the rest of the time you should be looking at either the items, the level disparities, the gold disparity, trying to find anything that looks different, looks weird, or is worth bringing up, interesting enough to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, your opening statement is a very important one to have through. I'm so joined by this person. We're jumping into game number 1. And immediately looking at these 2 compositions, we see that X and Y have been drafted through. We haven't seen X in such a long time. What is this? What can this god offer to a composition like this kind of thing? And even if, let's say, even if your death spent 10 minutes talking about that, you might have a different point to bring up. Or you can even say, echoing a lot of the, to echo a lot of what the death said, this is a god that's going to bring you an immense amount of team fight, and they're going to bring so much lockdown and CC onto a single target, which is great because this is a team composition that likes to be a little bit more single target oriented. So as long as you can keep this person alive, keep their head above water, then once you come to the team fight stage, this will be really good for them. So it's never a bad thing to repeat what the desk says, as long as you add a little bit more to it. Or if you think that the desk may have missed something or was completely wrong about something, you'd say they talked a little bit about this, but I tend to actually, kind of feel this way about this kind of thing. So never just say you're wrong or what they said was bad. The only time that we ever do that SPL is like when it's like Mifflin and Shirley just having a little bit of fun with each other kind of thing. Like we see that sometimes with like our guys. So like we'll be like, yeah, I think he's kind of dumb for that, but let me tell you this. But we're always kind of joking because we've got that, we got that time built up with one another there.
Sure.
So I think we're good to keep going.
Yeah, I think so. We've gotten a minute and 30 in, and it's only been like 20 minutes. So let's try to jump back in.
That like never happens in these kinds of matches. There's so rare you see a kill in mid lane, especially from this last meta where it was so hard to gank over there. Seeing that come out, but that's really what you want to see because you're drafting that Ratatosker as I was talking about. That character is a feast or a famine in early game.
Oh, I did remember the other thing I wanted to ask you, JMac.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, as a chair 2, one of the things that kind of, in my opinion, separates like the beginners from the intermediate from the like more experienced chair 2s is knowing when to continue your talking point and when to go over action that's going on screen as you're talking, especially if something like surprises you or catches you off guard. Like here in left lane, we were talking about, I think it was the Terra, if I'm not mistaken, and then in the mid lane, off screen, off camera, we get first blood, then we drop it and go into talking about the first blood. I think that's the correct call, but how do you stand generally on something's happening on screen, but I'm talking about something else?
I mean, in the case of like a first blood happening, you could definitely make a quick transition to that first blood, let the first blood, let the chair 1 bring something up, have a little talking point through, and you can jump back up, continue it, and then you can transition that back to what you were talking about as far as Terra. So if it's like, oh, we're talking about how good Terra is, oh no, this first blood happened over here, and they say, yeah, it's a first blood over to the Zhang Kui now. That's gonna get him nice little bit of a first blood bounty, trying to help escalate his lead because he looks like he's going for a tankier style of build, and say, yeah, it's not often that we see first bloods happen in mid. It's kind of a rare thing at these points, because nobody really wants to try and give up anything that early in the game in a position like that, especially on a god that you want to get an early kind of a lead through. And then once you kind of hit the main point on that, it's completely fine to just jump back over there. I think personally for your chair 2, you rarely want to talk about the what's on the screen more than anything. Like there are going to be moments where you've exhausted a point and you can like lead into like a fight or something like that happening, or you can say, if it's leading into like a team fight going through, obviously you can have your point and then transition your point immediately into, but it seems to instead be action over here around the Gold Fury and then kind of drop that point there. You very rarely as the chair 2 want to be the one to bring up exuberant gold and XP leads and things like that. You really don't want to just be like, oh, these guys going for their purple buff right now, blah, blah, blah. Because that's a lot of what we like to call like basic Billy chair 1 stuff. That's because your chair 1 is the guy to tell you what's happening right now on your screen. I'm gonna have this guy pull up the gold chart and I'm gonna tell you these guys are 2,000 gold up and 3K experience. Now you as the chair 2 can say, well, even though they're up 2,000 gold, 1,500 of that is only in the pocket of one single person right now, because that one person has 1,500 gold. They're the most important person on this team to make sure that you keep alive, to make sure that you keep that lead going through. You want to play through that guy. 3,000 experience. Where's that experience delving out to? Your chair 1 might say, okay, well, this guy's one level down here, but of that 3K, there's 3 levels now between your hunter and your chair 2 can then pick up and say, yeah, if you even take a look at their items, there's a full, there's an entire full item through. That's going to harshly diminish the boxing potential of these guys because you have a little bit of lifesteal for this one versus no lifesteal on the other one. It's going to make it more difficult for them to box, and it's essentially going to force them to now sit under tower for such a long time. So for your chair 2, try and avoid talking about the immediate on screen, like especially like the center of your screen and what they're doing, and more so kind of what is happening around that. Why is this important? They're going to tell you, your chair 1, it's kind of a weird way to say it. It's like your chair 1's going to tell you this is important, and your chair 2 is going to tell you why it's important. It's kind of the way that I see it there. I'm going to say, yeah, this Zhongkui's got first blood. That's got to be pretty good. And you're going to go, yeah, that is really good, because now he's going to get his tankier item online. He's going to start stacking faster. He's going to have more HP, more defenses than almost anybody on the map at this point. It's going to be that much harder to kill him. So that's kind of the general give and take on those.
Coming from this team, we have that ultimate from Terra, and through the Cosmos from the Ratatosker, creating a lot of space for these guys. Solo kill in mid though. Okay.
Solo kill in mid. We got Zhongkui getting that really quick kill. Kill Cam Kenny. That's gonna be so much fun. Killing Fuego My Ego, kind of killing.
You can let it keep rolling.
Breakfast foods thing.
Number one trap that every caster beginning falls into is calling everybody by full name. I'm calling that guy Kenny or Kill Cam the entire game. I'm never going to call him Kill Cam Kenny unless it's a hype moment. Same thing with Looney Tunes, Lucid Colors. I'm not going to call that guy Z Tantalus. He's either ZT or Tantalus. And the other one will be Delvin. Physics, Fuego, Hunter, King, and Rush. Or Rushology. I could probably do a full one there. You don't ever have to say all their name every single time. If you just got a quick way to shorten it, works out well.
Previous metas, Ratatosker hasn't really been a huge presence in there. Just because
especially they got numbers in their name. Like don't call out a bunch of them. Like you never hear us call him Sam for Soccer 2.
All coming out. Rushology barely manages to get out with beads from a nice collapsing wall from Terra. And Kill Cam Kenny gets another kill with the Devour Souls and a little DOT on that scroll. And he's just really pushing this mid lane down, taking advantage of that early kill.
Kill Cam Kenny is running this mid lane, and that is everything that you want from your Zhongkui. This guy scales so hard, and with the meta favoring those early builds,
trap number 2, don't need to know every single ability name either.
In relation to how they work earlier in the season.
That's such a common misconception about casting is that we need to know and say every single ability name. You don't. I fall into that trap. I do it so many times. I've been told 1,000 times you don't need to call it this every time. I still do, but it's not necessarily important. Also, because Devour Souls is Hades, not even Zhongkui. So if you say the wrong one, you look a little silly sometimes. So, just a common little trap misconception. So you don't need to say full ability names. Don't need to say full player names every time. You can shorten them. Just call it the stun. Call it the card.
Now, what is the correct name there, JMac?
What is the correct name? Expose Evil.
There you go. Well, for the 1, what's the 2?
What's that? I thought that one was the 2. I'm going to be honest. I don't give a damn about Zhongkui because we don't see him very often. That's the fun part.
For exercise. That's minus 200 points for JMac there.
Yeah, see, that's the thing I don't do.
And take some huge power spikes. Zhongkui, when he hits that late game, it's always been that way. He becomes...
I love this talking point, though. This is for sure a good talking point, especially after we just saw 2 kills on the Zhongkui. You definitely... Exorcism? I'm sorry, Anthony. I'm sorry. Close enough.
Damn, even you're wrong, too. Let's go!
I know.
See, that's why we don't...
I got close. I get 50 points for that, you know?
You know what I call it? Boo.
Oh, that's fair.
Because that's what he yells when he says it. He goes, boo!
Do like this talking point, though, from Ken for sure. After you have Kill Cam Kenny get those 2 kills, especially if you're devoting this much screen time to him this early into the game, you definitely want to go into why is that important, and this vein is super good for that.
Yep, early game thread.
And seeing this with 2 kills and 1k gold league coming in here, 1.2k about. This guy is going to be real scary going into this mid game here.
And one thing I spotted, little I spy here, does that Ratatosker's name look kind of familiar to you? I don't know about me, but I think that's the Tantalus, and I've only known him really as a ADC and a pretty dominant mid, so it's gonna be exciting to see if he can feast or famine on this Ratatosker that he's got going on there. What's your prediction?
Right, the Ratatosker. I know it's a Z-Tantalus specialty. He is a Ratatosker.
Little nerve-wracking to be going this deep into like player-specific stuff when we can see that there's some trouble brewing over here. I think that with these low health bars, with the stage of the game, and how aggressively these guys are positioning, the fact that Ratatosker's here level 5 with the ult, you'd ideally like to be ready to pass us off a little bit earlier, a little bit cleaner on this action that's coming through. I think this is a good talking point. If you know these players intimately, especially in amateur leagues, that is always something to add additional spice to the cast. But just make sure that you're saving that for a time when there's not something more pressing going on the screen.
Yeah, I think just even a quick mention, because kind of beat around the bush a little bit about the player said, oh, and if you may see on your screen, if you spy something, I spy a little, it's fun to add a little bit of flavor in there, but you can just keep it quick, especially as your chair one. Like, you want to do, it's a weird way to put this. Like, you want to be the one to talk, because you're like the big hype guy. You want to have your moments. But the more that you talk throughout the early game when nothing is happening, or throughout the mid game when nothing is happening, the less you have in the tank when the big moments do hit through. So the shorter and more concise you kind of keep things, the easier it is for you. And it also bails you out of situations like that where you're introducing a player, you're talking about them, you're giving their history, and then you're like, okay, cool, I've talked now for 20, 25 seconds. I want to give it to my chair too. And then immediately a fight starts breaking out and you don't have control of it again. It saves you from moments like that. But it also just helps you kind of reserve a little bit of that strength and energy for the actual fight coming up through. It's something that around end game happens a lot, where you'll like have this really hype moment come through. This big fight is happening, and then it goes over and it transitions to them starting at the fire jump, and now somebody else is coming to stop that. And you're like, well, I can't stop because this person might just jump through. Find those moments where you can kind of break your conversation, give yourself a breath, let your chair two take over. And if you're chair two and you trust each other, your chair two can take over, get things going. As soon as the fight starts breaking out, then they can throw it right back to you. Don't feel that you need to talk for a minute if there's still a bunch of stuff happening. Take a breather. The only people who ever need to talk that long is like your chair one in like game 5, potential game ending styles of fights. And even then, you'll hear like Dave or even myself drop it for a moment. Miff, Trelly, Gore, one of them, they're going to pick it right back up. And then they're going to say their sentence and they're going to get the hell out of there. It's something that Gore always says, like, whenever he's with me, is like, if you ever need a breath, get all your energy out there. If you see a brief moment in the action, drop it there. I'm going to take it for a sentence. And then as soon as it kicks back up, it's right back to you. Like, I'm not going to let that one hold. Obviously, online, it's a lot harder to do that kind of stuff. And it takes a lot of time and synergy and trust with your casters that you're doing it with. But the longer you try and hit the small points, like you could say just as quickly, immediately looking at the roster, Tantalus is a player that's much more known for his ADC and mid style of play. Seeing him in the jungle is a different pace. I'm excited to see what he can bring here on the Ratatoskr in this first game. You've now saved 20 seconds of trying to beat around the bush to him and what he's done. And now in the 5 to 10 seconds, you've said what he's doing. And that can give, if they recognize him and they have a point, then they can kind of talk on him too.
Or alternatively, if you do want to go for like the longer waxing poetic sort of style, I think that's fine, but you need to match that to the pace of the game. If you don't have 30 to 40 seconds to talk about Z Tantalus, if it's an active game, if there's stuff going on, you've got now about to be 3, maybe 4 kills in 4 minutes, you probably don't have the time for that. But if it was 0-0 18 minutes in, then you've probably got time to spend as much as you want on that.
Yeah, but that's obviously something when you're more experienced, you can kind of pick up on those kind of readings. Early, I'm not going to harp too much on it for new casters if they want to kind of have a talking point like that to go a little bit, because understanding pace of the game comes with a lot of practice of actually casting the game. Right. Yes, playing in those kinds of games helps, but until you've kind of casted the game and you can get a real good read of like a mini map or anything like that, it takes a little bit of time before you can really learn how long do I have to make this point. But then, like I said, as your chair one, you don't really want to talk for a super long amount of time throughout the early and mid game unless there's a ton of action happening, because you want to save all of your actual, discussion and talk for the actual fight. So this is when you're setting the tone. You're saying this is already looking like a fast-paced game. What do you imagine? Is this a composition that needs to thrive early? And you kind of bring up all these points. And this is like the best time where you can really make your chair two shine, because when nothing is happening as a chair one, you don't need a whole lot of energy. You don't need a whole lot of pizzazz. You don't need to talk super fast. You can slow things down. You can kind of bring up small points, let your tier 2 shine, because in the team fights, that's where you're all about. That's where your name is made as a caster and for a tier 1 for your play-by-play. Your team fights are yours. That's where you bring the energy. That's where you get hyped up. That's where you go crazy. And when it's not happening, that's where your tier 2 shines. That's where he's giving you the breakdown of the fight. That's where he's giving you why that fight matters, what's going to happen from it, why are they doing this kind of thing to begin with. So that's kind of the two ideologies of tier 1 and tier 2 is you're there to bring the hype and make your tier 2 look good, and your tier 2 is there to tell you why all of this stuff matters and then give it back to you once you get that kind of moment that you need there. So you're kind of setting each other up. You're setting them up for success by asking them important questions, by kind of bringing up the pacing and giving them moments to where while they're taking time to think about what they want to say next, because you don't always want your tier 2 to talk for 3 to 5 minutes in a game. That's not going to happen. It's unrealistic to expect people to talk for as long as, say, Mifflin or Gore or Aggro was able to do. Those are people who could take a single point. Those are guys who could sit down, look at the screen right now, see that there's a war flag on that support, and talk to you for 90 seconds to 2 minutes about why that war flag, what that war flag is, what it's going to do, how it can impact the game. That's unrealistic to expect for new and even like intermediate casters, is to be able to talk that long about a single interaction. So having a lot of things to talk about, and also what's the least sus way I can say this? Not blowing your load on every discussion point that you have. Not emptying the chamber on your pistol, not emptying every single round that you have right away is is the best way to put it. If you have 15 discussion points and 15 things you want to talk about, don't do it all at once. Take one, talk about it for 30 seconds to a minute. Take it, talk to it for a little while. And then if there's still nothing happening, your tier 1's brought something and he didn't have any new information to ask you about, then you can reach in and say, all right, cool, here's another round of ammo. Let's talk about this one. Spin the chamber. Let's talk a little bit about this. So that's I said the most sus way of it first, and then I gave the least sus immediately after. Right. So making sure you don't empty the chamber of all of your ammunition for what your discussion gun is going to be in this case. The metaphorical gun.
We like the bag of tricks, the ammunition. I haven't heard the blowing the load before, but
yeah, that's not a good way. That's typically a phrase that we use whenever it's like, this is my only set of the day. I'm not going to be casting for 3 more weeks. I'm gonna blow my load on this cast to give it literally everything I've got. I'm gonna go absolute. I'm gonna go mental whenever a single kill happens. That's kind of the joke of at least that phrase. That we sometimes even just say, obviously not on a cast or in a desk, but like, you know, when we're just like talking and BSing with each other, we'll say things like that. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna go absolutely crazy this set because it's my only one.
Yeah, you probably don't want to be blowing your load on camera unless your name is Trickstick, and then it's probably fine.
Yeah, even then.
Listen, I've only known him really as a ADC and a pretty dominant mid, so it's gonna be exciting to see if he can feast or famine on this Ratatoska that he's got going on there. What's your prediction?
Right, the Ratatosker. I know it's a Z-Tantalus specialty. He is a Ratatosker.
Oh, coming down through the cosmos, lands a big ult, getting both King of Darkness and Rushology. That was, I don't know if that's Caster's Curse to start talking about that, but that was perfect timing with a big impact.
That was great. You didn't have the best setup for that because we were kind of talking about the player a little bit more in depth, but as soon as the action came through, I thought you did a great job of just picking it up, transitioning into here's what's happening on the screen, make it exciting. I thought that was great.
Yeah, start off fine on that one. Obviously, everything kind of happened immediately. There wasn't a whole lot of like play-by-play that could happen because it was just double dunk, spin, dead.
Right.
So there wasn't a whole lot of like actual action. Again, the trap of you don't got to say both players' names. You could just say double kills the duo lane, and it'll get your point across through, and then immediately dropping back over to the chair 2 after that one. So no, I think it was fine. I think you brought a decent amount of energy to it as well.
The Ratatosker Slammer does the slamming. What else can I say? Here we see it. Some more fighting going over in the soul lane, but
Here's trap number 3 for you. Solo laners are almost never going to kill each other. It's gonna look like they're
It's
gonna kill
rare.
each other a lot, but generally speaking, they're gonna be okay over here. So don't feel like, unless you're 100% sure that they're going to die in whatever interaction we're watching, if you're talking about something else, don't feel like you need to drop it to talk about whatever's happening on the screen just because it's on the screen.
Yeah, solo lane, you're rarely going to see a death happen over there in a 1v1. There are rare exceptions that it does happen, but King Arthur, Cucullin, immediately, like if you pan over to a solo lane and you see action happening, like a King Arthur's ulting Cucullin, look at their HP bars, and you should see, okay, look at their HP, look at their mana bars, and say, okay, nothing's probably going to happen here. You can usually just ignore what's happening in solo. I would say like 99% of the time when it pans to solo lane, I'm talking about literally anything besides solo, unless we haven't talked about that matchup yet.
This guy, every time I'm playing with him in casuals, he's got the Ratatosker on lock. He's got it in his back pocket. He loves playing it. He loves bringing it out. It just hasn't been a meta god for a bit here, but watching him bring it out here, I love it every time, man. He's in love with this kind of play style, and it's going to be a treat watching him play here. But just to clarify here for captains, Z-Tantalus is a caster, so he's the one player here who isn't on the list to be drafted, so maybe a little bit of less pressure. You're the guy who doesn't have the eyes on you for this set, so he's going to be vibing in here. The other players, of course, captains, keep your eyes on them. This is going to be their set to make sure that we see what happens for their season. And a solo kill or a gank for Z-Tantalus over here in the solo lane on the physical.
And now we got King of Darkness got caught out, put to sleep with the Mesmerize, barely to squeeze out as Rushology's getting damage on it. But Rushology
Turn it to a Mez, don't gotta call it a Mesmerized.
One of those is level 5 with his ultimate. It might not be
It's a
much,
really
but
long
that
CC
coming
name for no
Darkness
reason.
is a real game changer. Fuego Maego coming in with a Kraken Whirlpool. Looney's trying his best, mesmerizes to get out, trying to call his chariot, but just can't get out in time. Fuego Maego gets the kill. Lucian now stuck out. They don't know where to go. Dash is down, but we don't know if they have the cooldowns to really finish it. Whirlpool comes out, doesn't do enough damage, and Lucian manages to squeak themselves out just barely and not giving them another kill. Honeybuns, they managed to get their first kill of the game, while Z-Tantalus is now just, I thought he was invading, but he's just taking his little back camps here.
There's been so much going on, man. It feels like there's like not enough to
Probably
talk or too much to talk
could have
about.
passed that a little bit sooner once
like
Kraken. Yeah, you can always get out of those a little bit faster. Once you see that Lucid is like still like 50% HP, and even with 3 sitting that close to tower, say Lucid should be out of this one, and then let your tier 2 kind of just talk about, you know, the rotation through there. I know for me personally, like, obviously this league functions way differently than anything I've ever done, where you're drafting other players in. So I guess discussing that X player may not be up for a draft, at least in this context, could be important for me as a viewer. Even to know that this is a draft game, like just kind of a preliminary, hey, here are the players in here that they're going to be pulled through.
Right.
I personally, as a viewer, don't really care as much. I see what's going on, so the entire like 30 seconds or so spent talking about Tantalus liking the Ratatosker, playing the Ratatosker, I like that, saying it's a pick that he loves to play. It's a play style that he really likes. It's a kind of pick that he can get involved and get active with early. It is one that is probably one of his best picks when he's not playing his traditional role. That's kind of good information to then lead beyond. And again, because like the team, the fight over on left, like was literally just dunk, spin, double dead. There's not a lot to break down. You say it was a good rotation by Tantalus, got the dunk, immediately had the spin. There was no beads used by the Shibalanke. Questionable as to not using the relic, but maybe recognizing he was dead on impact and yada yada. Then talk about Tantalus. This is a pick he plays all the time whenever he's not playing in a competitive game. But I could tell that you were at a loss for what you wanted to say next, because you were kind of beating around a little bit too much in the solo lane from there. Not from the actual like King Arthur and Cucullin part, but because you went to the King Arthur Cucullin, went back to the Ratatosker, and then had the stumbles afterward. You were trying to figure out what it was you wanted to say, as opposed to just kind of saying it and then moving on. Think a little bit about what you want to say on. I know it's hard to do in the moment when you're thinking. I do it all the time, where I'm just like, what's my next point? I'm going to go ahead and just kind of talk about what I'm seeing here from here's what I wanted to talk about. Let's move on to this kind of thing. So you kind of stumble. but slowing yourself down, even though it's a really fast-paced early game, just the early game for now. So as long as you can keep yourself slowed down, it gives you time to collect your thoughts, and allows you also, if a moment, especially if you're like slowing down, it gives you kind of a bailout moment where if something kicks off, you're already kind of slow, and then you can ramp yourself back to it and drop it off from that kind of point there. It's something that, at least for a lot of Chair 1 casters, they feel like because they're the Chair 1, they're the hype, they're the energy, they got to be fast, they got to be ready, they got to be loud all the time. You don't need to. You can slow things down. If we're at minute 8 of a Fire Giant dance, I'm not trying to do a whole lot of like high energy, high octane, getting things ramped up. I'm really slowing things down. You'll see Goremizer do this a lot. Listen to Goremizer when the game slows down if you want like really good Chair 1 and Chair 2. Because I'll ask him a question around like a Fire Giant and say, you know, what do we need to see in this next Fire Giant fight that could help break open, you know, the team fight? What can, you know, Captain Twig do? You know, is it Captain Twig who needs to be the one to start this? You know, what's got to happen? He'll go, you know, he's just got to get active a little bit. We just need to see him get to the back line. He can find his way back there, find a pick onto one of the carries, get the beads, get the Aegis away. That's a great way to start the team fight out. And you'll see him, and you'll legitimately, like, you'll hear, I like to call it the patented Goremizer pace breaker.
Yes.
Because there'll be so much going on, and then there's a whole lot of nothing for the next 5 minutes, and you'll just hear, you ask a question over to Gore, or the Chair 2's done, and they pass it back to him, and you'll just hear him say nothing for like 3 to 5 seconds.
His pauses are perfect. He has the best pauses in the SPL.
Yeah, and I've actually learned a lot of that from him. Like, whenever you hear my pauses through, mine might not be as long as his, but I usually get like a word or two in, and then we keep it going a little bit, kind of slow things down. Because it's so fast-paced early, you want to try and keep that same pacing, but when no action is happening, when you're not getting ramped up for the next kill, when you don't see this gank happening over here, you can definitely slow things down a little bit more, give a little bit of pause. Obviously, like, the big pauses are much more for kind of late game fights, anything like that. Dances around fire, dances around gold, all those kind of things. When, like, you're waiting for the objective, when you're waiting for the Phoenix. I've made the mistake, and this is a late game thing when you get to, like, Phoenix pushes. When it's so close and, like, all it takes is, like, one good startup of a fight, but they go in and they do nothing. And then they go in and they do nothing. If you keep getting really fast up for these Phoenix, it's like, oh, he's going into the Phoenix, he's getting ready to do this, he's going to, and nothing happened. Okay, well, now they're getting ready to go, and no, do that, and nothing happened. The ramp up for your Chair 1 is the most important part for a lot of these fights, and especially these ones around like your Phoenixes and things. Is you'll hear a lot of times what I'll do is we get to a Phoenix push, I'll say, we're grouped up on left, ready to jump to the Phoenix, minion wave, still waiting for that one to jump through. Gotta imagine that's the moment where we see Toaster Strudels really try and push their lead, get into that Phoenix. All it takes, one blink, one ultimate to be burned away, and that's going to kick up that advantage. Now the minion wave has walked in at this point after I've said something like that. Minion wave dies, nothing happens. But without this minion wave, it already gets cleared out of the way. There's nothing much more we can do. Just waiting for that first moment, that first gas pedal to be stepped on for one of these team fights to break out. Because what that does is I slowed myself down so much, and I built up all of this hype and this energy ready to go for it, but it never happens, so I don't need to use anything. I can just kind of set it back down, put it back in the back pocket, wait for the next opportunity, and say, cool, I'm going to get out because they're clearly not doing anything now. Chair 2, take over. Chair 2 is going to do his thing, comes back, next minion wave is about to collapse. Chair 2 drops it. Minion wave is here. They jump in, all of a sudden, fine, okay, to the back line, and now we can start ramping things up. It's all about that ramp up, kind of slowing things down to get built up. Because if you always come in at a 10, you have to go down. You can't go up when you're at a 10. You're at your peak. You always have to go down at that point.
Gore was telling us last week that he thinks the scale has like an 11 and a 12 on it. Because he
those are...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you can hit your 11s and your 12s. Those are for your insane moments of unpredictability. Like, you're not going to always hit your 11s and your 12s because you don't want to start a fight at a 10 unless it's like something like mind-blowing, like Benny Q raw snipe literally one-tap somebody. Then I'm jumping in up top, but then I'm ramping myself down just a little bit, and then I'm kicking myself back up when the action starts again. Because if I'm starting up at that 10, Betty Q, massive snipe, takes out one instantly. There's nothing going on. I'm not going to keep myself up here this entire time because nothing is actually happening. So instead, Betty Q gets the snipe. And now with only 5 people left, they got to back up. There's no one left, to defend this Phoenix. And you slow yourself back down a little bit. You get ready for the next moment, and then all of a sudden everything's kicking back up, and you kick it right back into high gear and keep going, and keep going, and keep going. And now the team fight is ending. The game is over. Everybody's pushing into the throne room, and there's nothing left that they can do. Game number 1 goes over here, and then you can kind of pass that off. Because if you start at the 10 always, the only way you can go up is that 11-12. But if nothing more exciting happens than what your 10 was, and you're trying to make that force that excitement at that 11 and 12, it sounds disingenuous. So I typically personally don't try and start a fight at a 10. I started like an 8-9. And then I can go up if I need to. And then when it slows down, they get back into the fountain. The team fighting is done for the moment. Now they're pushing into the base. I've cooled down a little. And now I'm able to ramp back up for the actual kind of fight around the Titan more than anything. So you certainly can go higher than 10. Realistically, for new casters, never start at 10 unless something absolutely crazy happens, because then you fall into that pitfall of now you have to feel like you have that kind of mental hang up that you feel like you need to stay at that 10 when not everything is going to be at that 10 kind of a moment. So if you're starting your normal conversation at a 6 and a fight happens, kick yourself up there and build your way there. And then if you're at your peak and you still can't believe what's going on, then you can go a little bit higher. If that Johnny pentakill, for example, that one starts out, Johnny's got his first kill, Johnny's got his second, but he's not done. He's going to the back line. He's already found Sam for soccer. Sam has already gone. It's only the carries left, and now they're both going. Oh my god, pentakill's going through. You're shouting that pentakill at your 12, 13. Hell, you might even shooting up to 20 if you have the opportunity to do so. But you don't start a pentakill at 10 and then try and ramp higher than there. You started out that slow ramp up to it until it just goes absolutely wild, and then you can just go 8 to 10 or 6 to 10, and oh my god. Because the thing you always have to keep in mind, and it sounds almost kind of odd to say this, because you always want to do it like you want to have that highlight reel moment. You want to have that moment where you get excited and get crazy. Always got to take your audience into account. Because if you're always fast and you're always excited and always loud, your audience gets anxious. They kind of get anxious waiting for what's happening. Because here's what's going to happen with, I would say, like 50% of your audience. They're not paying attention to the screen. They're looking over. They're playing their game of Smite right now. They're doing their own thing. They're watching a YouTube video while the game is going on. But as soon as they hear your chair 1 get excited, like, oh, hold on, what's going on over here? And they look over and they go, oh, damn, that's kind of cool. And then that fight's over. Okay, cool. I'm going to go back to playing my game right now. I'm going to go back to watching my YouTube video. I'm going to go back to my other Twitch stream at the moment.
Playing TFT.
So what? Yeah, so once you start getting excited as chair 1, your audience starts getting a little bit more invested into it. They start getting a bit more excited. So if you're always going fast, you're always doing this, and you're always keeping the same pace, and you're never changing things, you're never slowing things down, you're just hitting fast all the time, your audience is going, what's happening? What's going on? Who's getting a kill? What's happening? Who died? Where am I waiting? Are they doing Fire Giant? No, it's only 6 minutes. They can't be excited for that. What's going on? Why is this guy so hyped up right now?
Or worse than that, they just tune it out because it's all the same, and then there's no deviation to tell them, oh, I need to look at my screen now, because everything is hype, so nothing is hype. Exactly.
And it would honestly feel disingenuous if you hyped up every single kill that happened. First Blood, if you can cast a First Blood, if you're waiting for that moment to go and you're on the screen as it's happening, you can ramp up to the excitement of First Blood. You can ramp up the excitement of the next kill after that. But not every single kill's got to jump that high up, especially if it's as simple as like a Vamana holding left click and W key on a 20% HP target. Oh boy, Vamana, he ulted, he held left click and W. That's real cool. Nobody's going to be, let's be honest, nobody's going to be hyped to see a Vamana W key left clicking. Like, that's not exciting.
I think we're all sick of that by now.
I'm being real. Like, nobody's excited about hold W, press left click for your hunters, But when you get your 1v1 hunter fight, that's exciting because you'll get to see your hunters box against each other. One outplays the other. Oh, okay, well, now it fizzled out. Nothing's there. You can kind of just drop it back out again. It's very rare that I personally want to start really high up. I like to have that nice little build. But always knowing how to pace yourself throughout the game is the most important thing that you can do for that, is understanding your pacing, recognizing pace of the game, and being able to then apply that to it. Because like for now, it's been a lot of action. We had 6 kills at 6 minutes. That's way faster pace than a lot of other games that we normally see, which is like, 5 kills at 10 to 20 minutes at that point. So this is a faster paced game, so you can kind of keep that energy. But when you have your low points, your moments of no action, that's when you can slow things down.
To really make me put the full picture. But Poseidon, super strong in here. I mean, the Whirlpool Cripple is going to make so much happen for this guy, but Z-Tantalus making it happen over here in mid lane anyway.
Another through the cosmos lands on Hunter and manages to get a nice little acorn blast out to secure the damage. Now we really see that Toaster Strudels are up 6-1, and they're trying to get their advantage where they can. Physics DZN down a level from that gank, but still managing to exert pressure and let his presence be known. He's not letting that gank stop him.
These teams are reaching up.
You can let this keep rolling through. I think that's a moment for your chair too. You could have just kept that one going. I don't think Chair one needed to interrupt for the fight there. Again, it was another. He dunked down, he dashed in, he's stunned, he got a kill. Nothing special to that one. You could have just kept talking through it.
The entire objectives area. And with so many objectives that really require you to take control and keep it for so long, Zhang Kui and Terra on the same team. Huge circles, huge damage coming out. When team fights come, those characters, you gotta keep your eyes on them, because if you can't control them, they're gonna run through your entire team. Fuego's got an idea with this Poseidon to make sure that you have the cripple field online. There isn't an in for the Ratatosker and the Terra. But if you're looking at it now, Z-Tantalus has got this level lead, and it's gonna get worse before it gets any better. This Ratatosker is at its strongest point in the game right now. He's going to try to even it up soon, though.
Okay. Kraken comes out, misses.
Never mind.
Away,
jeez, that might have been one that I would have let my chair 2 hold at that point, because that was embarrassing.
Coming on this dual lane, Rushology caught out, uses beads after his dash, and just manages to get away. King of Darkness trying to exert some pressure mid lane, but just can't do it.
So we've done a couple of weeks of these now, and this isn't a piece of feedback I think I've given to any chair ones yet, if I'm not mistaken, but I feel like there's too much energy in this cast.
Yes, very excited. As soon as that Kraken missed, I'm coming at no energy on that one. I'm not that I'm coming in at a 0 or anything like that, but I'm not coming in with like Kraken. I'm just like, ooh, Kraken, a bit off the mark there by Fuego. That's going to be a dropped gank over on the solo lane side. Could have been a nice setup and a nice way back in for Honey Buns, but wait for the Kraken means that solo laner is going to be out. But
and same thing with the beads on the left-hand side of the map. Like, as soon as he uses beads and you know there's no further aggression there, you don't need any further energy dedicated to that.
I think the best way of putting it's the way that we discuss it, is sometimes volume does not equal inflection or hype. You can get really loud, like, I can just sit here and yell really loudly, and this is really cool, and oh my god, they're just going to be, okay, he's just yelling. He's just yelling for the sake of yelling. But when you put a little bit more inflection in your voice, sometimes the hype isn't even necessary. You can go Kraken, bit off the mark that time, and you can tell that Kraken was supposed to be big, that it was supposed to be really heavily emphasized, but because it missed, there's nothing. The beads, put a little bit of, dramaticism in the voice as well. And the beads, now gone from Rushology. He's not going to have those. His only safety is that dash. But now with the beads and the dash off cooldown, susceptible to another gank kind of thing. So you don't always have to come in really loud. Sometimes just the way that you project your voice can really help out there. Having that extra little bit of oomph with it. Like, sure, you can be loud, and you do want to get loud and hype when big things happen. But when something big happens and it's a miss like that, like when that Kraken goes through, I'm not going to go, Kraken! But it's off the mark. Because now you feel like, oh, well, that Kraken was really big, but it really wasn't. So instead, you can emphasize how important the Kraken should have been by going, Kraken, just a bit off the mark that time by Fuego. Not going to be able to land a kill on the King Arthur this time through. So, the way you say it versus how loud you say it.
Ken says, as a chair 2, it's hard to know exactly when to just continue talking past a kill. That's what I think I got lost in asking you that question previously, JMac, but for me, as a chair 2, I will continue talking through action that's happening on screen, like if it's an eventuality or 100% for sure that it's going to go one way or the other. Like if you've got if the solo laner, it's 27 minutes in, you got 5 people surrounding him and he's at the tier 2 tower line, that guy's going to die, he doesn't walk out of there, you can briefly mention they should bring down the tier here, blah blah blah, keep going on with your point. Where do you draw the line of I need to pitch this over to the tier 1 versus I should keep talking here because I don't want to interrupt the flow for something that's not as important?
In early game, you can get away with it a little bit more. In late game, as you say, where it's 5 versus 1 and the 5 is pretty much guaranteed dead, you can kind of get away with that. In this particular situation, the second that camera pans over to Fuego and that gank starts to happen over on the right side of the map, and you see Fuego, he's all the way like right here, like as soon as it passes here, I drop it. Like before he's even this far in, as soon as it pans to Fuego, you go, at Fuego, he's trying to get a kill on the right side. And then I'm dropping it if I'm chair 2, I drop it at that point. Your chair 1 picks it up. Absolutely nothing happens. And if they had a good talking point they were going on about, you can say, miss that point over and to the right. But going back to what you were saying about, X, Y, Z, so-and-so, and that can allow them to then jump back into their discussion point. But if you're holding it this long through and let it go back through, like let the play keep happening.
He's gonna try to even it up soon, though.
Kraken comes out.
If that's the point where you drop, if the point where you drop is where Kraken missed, your chair 1 now has nothing really to talk about because the Kraken's gone, the Whirlpool missed, and there's nothing to happen now. If you haven't dropped it as a chair 2 by the time that Kraken is already out there, and you see this King Arthur is away, you just keep holding on to it at that point. Unless like your point is completely done and you have nothing left to talk about, you can just honestly keep going at that point through. But that just comes down to practice and kind of recognizing the map and kind of the situational awareness there. If you drop the moment it goes over to Fuego, perfectly fine. At this point through, with Kraken whiffing, King Arthur's already under tower, I'm still going as chair 2 and I'm just talking past it. And then your chair 1 can then recap what had happened. Or you can even say, blah, 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 Kraken off the mark there by Fuego. That's going to be an easy this. And then have maybe a new point to elaborate on kind of situation.
And if you need a good transition word, I think every single caster I've had on so far said your best chair 2, if you need a crutch for this is how I'm pitching it to the chair 1 in a hurry, it's just hold that thought and then immediately goes over to the other guy.
Yeah, that is the biggest tossing of a softball kind of term that you can give is hold that thought. Fuego going in, Fuego trying to go for this gank on right side. Done. Cool. Easy peasy. Your chair 1 knows, all right, I'm ready. Because your chair 1, he is sitting there looking at that minimap, waiting for something to happen. And then as soon as it pans over to somebody where there's now more people, your chair 1's ready. He's like, yes, 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 fight, fight, fight. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. Let's get this kill going. And nothing happens. I'm like, all right, well, nothing happened. I'm done. I don't give a damn about what's happening on screen anymore. Chair 2, what do you want to talk about?
And the King Arthur barely gets away, drops his ultimate, but we see Mini Devlin just able to squeak out. But we got a gank coming on this dual lane. Rushology caught out, uses beads after his dash, and just manages to get away. King of Darkness trying to exert some pressure mid lane, but just can't do it. And now seeing that this Tyr and Zhongquei are together, I'm starting to notice a bit of a pattern. We got Killcam Kenny and Lucian Colors, who both have passives or abilities that stop them from being knocked up, knocked back, whatsoever. We got a Fearless coming out. Z-Tan's coming in through the Cosmos, lands it. Beads stop the knockup. Z-Tantalus gets a confirmed kill on Hunter. King of Darkness barely squeaking away. I don't know if he's looking or what he's trying to get, but I don't think he's going to get much.
One other part of, and you can just let it keep rolling. Another part of why we don't always want to say every single ability every time is because it starts getting stale. When you set through the Cosmos 4 times in 8 minutes, it gets stale. So we come up with other things. Off the tree, jump through the jungle, you can just say dunks down from the ultimate or off the branch and whatnot. So just coming up with other ways to say the ultimates helps out to prevent staleness when it comes to your actual play-by-play commentary.
Big fan of the linguistic variety.
And Tyr's basically entire kit.
If it's a one word like Kraken, you can just say Kraken. Like that's an easy one. When you have through the Cosmos, Whirlwind of Rage and Steel.
That's the one I was gonna say.
God, when you have these ultimates that are a novel in their name alone, like finding a fast way to say I'm super easy, like it will help you go so far.
I think he's still in here. I was casting a Slash tournament with my buddy Thomas, and he called it Whirlwind of Throwing 'em All. And I kind of loved that, because I would never say that twice, but just once, that's phenomenal. That's some great spice.
Yeah, anything that adds flair. You'll also never catch me saying Ishell's ultimate by its name because it's so dumb. I'm sorry. I love you, Aggro, but Great End on the beam is so bad as an ultimate name for a team fight.
Great End is the name of it?
Great End. The ultimate for Ishell is Great End. I will never call it Great End. It will forever be the beam. Yeah. The rainbow beam. I've even almost called it like Aurora beam before because it just sounds cooler.
So much.
No, I love Aggro. He's a great guy. I'm definitely not trying to roast Aggro, but I will say that as a former caster, Aggro, you should know to have cool ability names that we get to yell on cast. I want a cool Landfall. That's
Landfall
sick. That's good. That's a so good one. Great. The only time I will say it is if it's like a full duration of it. And they get the kill, I'll say, an Ishell bringing the great end to their competition. Nowhere for them to go.
They have to wait out those abilities, or they have to take picks before Toasted Rules can really do anything. And so, it's going to be a...
Snipe is a very common catch-all phrase for anything that's a straight line shot, by the way. So,
long range.
Off, Kukulkan, Raw, there's another one that I had immediately. Giannis, that one. Snipe. If you want anything to be its catch-all for those ultimates, Snipe.
Lead from the early game. They're 3K up on Toasted Strudel's side. They need to make sure
and Shotgun.
That
Shotgun's a fun one for Giannis.
Start coming up, that they have to play around those abilities,
Shotgun.
Do what they can. With the advantages that they do have, a lot of damage coming out from a double mage over here, and hopefully making sure that they can kill Toasted Strudels before Toasted Strudels really gets going on them.
I think the big thing is going to be, like you said, big circles. Like this circle coming out from Zatantalus through the
good transition.
Knock up. Dash tries to...
He mezzed him out of the dash?
Circles like this circle coming out from Zatantalus through the Cosmos, gets the knock up.
Yo!
Dash tries to come out.
Who is this guy?
Before it can get his CC immunity, gets picked out. Kill Cam.
There you go. Good call.
To fall down to Hunter and King of Darkness. And these teams are just scrapping. Ultimate coming out from King Art.
Don't talk about this. Just pretend this is not happening. Just drop it like
Soul Lane doesn't happen.
Yeah, drop it.
Soul Lane doesn't matter.
Earlier.
The second it gets this Soul Lane, you're out of there. You're out. You let your chair 2 break that fight down.
Arthur got Physics up in the air. Physics doesn't care. He's all hulked out. He gets the totem, but now he's stuck. Knockup comes out. Stomp. Stun in this tier 1 ultimate, but Physics runs away. Not really able to do much. Health kind of low. We see a gank coming from.
You see now what happens, and you like keep rolling, is you now used everything and kept it so long. Your tier 2 could have had a moment to break down and then give back to you. Rare moment where holding it was kind of okay, but like you could have just dropped a little sooner.
Cassius be damned. Fuego running his way over.
As long as you can each have time to do what essentially your job is, more interaction is better than less interaction.
Yeah, it's a conversation. That's the best way to put it, is you and your tier 2 are there to hold a conversation throughout the game.
It's not 2 separate monologues.
Yep.
For this whole minute-long sequence of fights, Killcam Kenny was huge in that mid lane, so that's a really...
Need to be less scared to not call everything, and that's going to come A, with practice for you, and B, with practice with specifically whoever you're casting with. Because you'll have people where it's like, I don't know what kind of performance I'm going to get, what he's going to say if I give it over to him, but especially if you're casting with the same person or the same group of people constantly, you should get a pretty good feel for, I know this guy's going to do XYZ, then give it back to me and it'll be all good. Just put yourself out there, be willing to make a mistake for the betterment of the future of your casting. Even if it feels a little awkward, feels uncomfortable, makes you nervous, just try it, see how it goes, and then improve on it going to the next one.
Yep.
Big bonus coming down to the Honeybun side. You gotta imagine that they're feeling pretty good about that trade. Getting the kill onto Roshology feels pretty bad. There's not that much you can really do about the Apollo Mez. Looney was just waiting around there with it ready, waiting from the dash before the CC mini comes up, and at that point, it's really just death at that point.
It was great use of CC and CC from both teams. Looney managed to catch out the dash before it went to CC immune, and we got a cripple coming out to stop the Arthur from running before he could really get away from that Kraken. So both teams are really using their kits to the full advantage here. But like you said, with the kits, it's going to be up to King of Darkness to see if he can get his stuff out before Lucian or Killcam Kenny can get their abilities out. And it's either, like you said, they're going to have to wait for it to be over, or you got to initiate and catch them when they're by surprise, when their pants are down. And that's going to be a big decider in here, this late game.
And if you take a look over at that mid lane, the levels are pretty much evened up at this point. That one kill, hugely impactful, a lot of time down.
I can tell you've watched a lot of Hindu Man by hearing
really
the catch them with their pants down comment.
At least help to close.
It's a very common phrase he uses.
Oh, Kraken comes out. Looney Tunes get caught.
Good drop.
Gets caught trying to take some buffs, but he manages to squeak away. King of Darkness uses his ultimate. Lawbringer coming out. The Tantalus gets the confirmed kill on Fuego by Ego, who overextended. King of Darkness trying his best, goes for the heal slash, but doesn't connect with anything. Gets exercised. Consume demons. Killcam Kenny gets a confirmed kill on King of Darkness, and a lot of cuz coming out. Just getting ridiculous for me.
A lot of
Where did his health bar go? Fuego got dropped down and dashed on by Tantalus, and he was gone.
Nah, it's gone.
In the middle of 3 people, sure, but I don't know. You're alive for maybe half a second, you get to see 3 of them, and then you're down in the death screen. It doesn't feel good. But this team, I mean, they're so far ahead at this point. They're when you're caught out.
Are they? Are they so far ahead at this point? I don't think 1900 is so far ahead. I'd say that's ahead, but
yeah, always be careful about like large sweeping terms like so far, really like dominating things like we use like we'll say like dominating or like convincing all the time. Like those are what we like to call like the flavor filler buzzword kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever you're saying things about leads, 2000 at 12 and a half minutes isn't like so far up as far as gold is concerned. Like I would actually say the most important thing in the first 15 minutes of the game is experience over anything. 15 to 20 is experience. But once you start passing 15 minutes, then you start looking at gold. Once you start getting to, I would say your best early game lead where you could say that they are really far ahead is between like 4,000 to 6,000 from 15 to 20 minutes. That's where you can say this is a like pretty far lead for one team. Anything less than that, like you're looking like 3,000 to 4,000 at 20 minutes, they're ahead, but it's not too bad. It's mostly the experience that really comes into play. I see Tantalus at 13 versus 11. That's big. Jean-Qui is 3-1-3 versus a 1-3, still same level. What's he been doing? Where's his farm? Why is he not absolutely just like dog stomping everybody that's in front of him? It's the 6-0-4 Ratatosker that is 2 levels up over the Poseidon. It's the 1-1 King Arthur that's behind the 0-1 Cucullin. It's the 0-1-4 Apollo that's a level down to the Shibalanke. Like, why is the Apollo who has 4 assists behind the Shibalanke who's died twice to the Apollo in that lane at that point? So that's where the immediate numerical values, like when you look up at the top and you see a ton of kills don't mean jack pre-15. And we're going to be real honest here. Kills don't mean anything the first 15 minutes of the game unless there's Gold Furies, Pyromancers taken at that point. Once the golds are taken, once the pyros are taken, once you see those values come through, that's when leads matter. But when you're seeing 10 to 3 and 2K up, that's nothing. That's legitimately nothing. That is 400 gold between every single player. And probably most of that 1900 gold lead is on just the Ratatosker, who has 3 full items versus the Poseidon, who's 2 items at that point. So just always be careful with like the big buzzwords, especially early in a game, because it will get people to start looking. When you say they're so far, people immediately look up and they say, okay, yeah, 10 to 3, that's pretty big. Oh, wait, it's like 1 tower. It's like 2,000. Like maybe it's really not as far. Oh, wait, no, Ratatosker's 2? Okay, that's pretty big. So
I've got a question for you here from chat, JMac, and I'll let you answer
Sure.
this while I run to the bathroom real quick. If you
Yeah.
see the Zong the same level despite the slash line, do you highlight Discordia farming well, or do you look elsewhere? So basically, if somebody's farther ahead in kills or somebody's died a lot but they're the same level, where do you look for to talk about how they're getting that farm, how they're keeping up, or why they're not farther ahead?
Yeah, I definitely look at what the Discordia has been doing, and most importantly, if it's one where it's a case of, okay, Zhang is 3-1-3. He's been part of 6 out of 10 kills in this game, and 3 of those have been onto his counterpart. I'm looking at what has Discordia been doing to get back in the game, and what has Zhangqi been doing to not exacerbate his lead at that point. Why is this Zhangqi part of 6 kills, but is the exact same level of Disco? Well, Zhangqi's been rotating over left a lot of times, trying to go for all these kills, and they're not going for a Gold Fury, and they're not getting kills at optimal times is probably the best way to say, because whenever they're killing Disco, it's after Disco's already taken their buff. It's already after the shield buff is already down, the red buff, the green buff. These are already all down at that point. So killing Disco, yeah, that's 15 to 20 seconds where Discordia is off the map. That's 15 to 20 seconds where Zhangqi isn't doing anything new on the map. Sure, he's got a little bit of tower damage, but he's not going out and getting any kind of extra farm beyond there. His team's not getting Gold Fury. His team's not getting Pyromancer. So because of that, this Discordia is just getting neutral farm that's keeping them in the game. Because at least here on 10.6, neutral farm is some of the most important thing. And it's one of the things I harped on a lot about the Niflheim Wargs, is when the Wargs were losing early game team fights, when the Wargs were down 6-7 kills, I look up at the gold and they're 2,000 gold up. And you're like, what the hell? Why are the Wargs so far ahead? They're losing. They're not winning any of their team fights. They're not getting any kills. It's because they're doing neutral farm. They're getting shield buffs. They're getting cooldown buffs. They're getting mid harpies over here. They're getting back harpies over there. So making sure to recognize where farm is being allocated is the most important part. Whether that be, is it Discordia getting a lot of extra farm, or is it Zhangqi not getting a lot of farm? When Zhangqi is getting his kills, is it because there were 3 people around him to help get those kills? And when the Disco is dying, is it because they're the only one there? How long has the Disco been solo farming over everything else? And kind of, because every time we looked over at Discordia, she's by herself. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have a tier sharing way. She doesn't have Poseidon sharing way. Poseidon's always over in right or over in left. Discordia has been alone by himself. So despite Zhang having 6 kills effectively in this game, he's always had other people with him. So he's splitting so much farm. So I think it's kind of that double-edged sword of like, yeah, he has a lot of kills, but he's sharing a lot of that kill and a lot of that bounty with other people. And that's where you can kind of look through. I think the most important thing when you're now looking here is like, yes, he's super far ahead, but maybe more important now is to look where the rest of the kills are. It's on this Ratatosk, 604. He's 2 levels up. The Poseidon can't get anything. He only barely is able to get these kills. Kind of a situation. So I think being able to recognize when the kills are happening and what's being done post-kill. The classic patented stuff after the stuff.
Yep.
It's the important part. Is you got the kill, what next? Oh, you got the kill and you went back to base? Well, then you're no better than Discordia because you sent the Discordia back to base. So you got a kill and you went home and you spent your gold. The Discordia waited an extra 5 seconds to get out of base compared to you who killed them and spent 5 seconds of your time backing. So I think that's where you look at in that kind of case. So you see 3-1-3 versus 1-3-0. They're the same level. You more so highlight what is Zhangqi not doing with these kills versus what is the Discordia doing with these deaths. And you can mention, okay, well, Discordia is by themselves. They've gotten all of this free farm in the mid lane. Nobody's come over to help them. Everybody's coming over here to help out kill Cam Kenny. Everybody's doing whatever they can to make sure the Zhangqi is ahead.
Let's see. We've got Gear Chief saying, I think my idea was wanting to make, or is that Gear? I can't remember. It's either Gear Chief or Ken, one of the two of them, saying that the idea was to make a big thing out of how dominant the early game was for the Toastal Strudels. I would, this is kind of what we were talking about before, argue the opposite. I would think that if it is reasonably close, you would want to paint the picture that it is close as opposed to that it's a stomp. Because a stomp isn't interesting to watch. Like, at some point, if it gets bad enough, you just turn it off because you know what the outcome is going to be. If you can even remotely paint the picture that it's close, that either team could win the game, that makes the audience much more engaged and much more interested in watching it. You got, as Anthony says in chat, you got to push the underdog.
Now you're caught out. That's okay.
The moment that you like call a game, audience loses interest.
manage those leads. Make sure that those impact fights aren't having the impact that they at least need to have to make sure the snowball's not out of control. And hey, the lead is about 3K approaching right now. 2.5 or 2.5 going to.
Don't do math on cast.
Fights, it's 10-3 right now, but the gold lead, at least, it's not a death sign just yet.
It definitely is not, but I think it's more
Hello.
gold. You want to look at XP because XP stops when you hit 20.
Y'all gonna let him get away with that?
Discordia Apple coming out and kill Cam Kenny, not doing too much. Lawbringer trying to get him back, and Dash comes in, but Zatantalus goes in, kills Huntor. Kraken comes out to try to stop Zatantalus through the Cosmos, gets him out. Fuego Maego trying to confirm it. Zatan comes back, dives in, confirms Fuego Maego.
There you go.
Kenny tanks tower with an Aegis and an ultimate. King of Darkness looking kind of hungry. Kill Cam Kenny trying to show King of Darkness who's boss. Damage coming out, but cannot find King of Darkness. That was a huge fight swing and a very, very aggressive ultimate from Zetan. And he managed to make it work with Kill Cam Kenny tanking that tower.
Drop.
Yeah,
Drop sooner.
Just
drop
like
a little sooner.
Even a sentence sooner would be so much smoother. And I do want to add, Ken, we talked, I think, last week, it might have been the week before, about when a chair 2 should be talking during a team fight, and it's like the short little vocal pops, and I think you had a great one there of he's going back in, like that injects additional energy without talking over the top of or needing to prevent the chair 1 from saying what they're saying. Like, you let them do their job and then you just sprinkle a bit of spice on top of that. That's really good.
Yep.
So aggressive.
It's one of my favorite things of a chair 2 with me is whenever they give me that
7-0,
pop, because it gives me that much more energy to keep going with it.
The bounty that you're going to get is so huge.
He's too slippery though.
Zetanless has got to watch his health bars, because if he goes down, especially to a carry over here, when the difference in levels is maybe 1 to 2 max, it's pretty even over here in ADC. It's gonna be a huge boon for Honey Buns over here. But walk around the corner here, maybe he's gonna get more kills before he even thinks about dying.
Rushology trying to get out with Branching Bull as Dash comes out. Zetan closes the distance, can't find it. Darkness comes out and makes sure.
The quality of the drop, I think, was fine there. You had ample time to set that up a little bit sooner and maybe have the chair 1 handle that, but nothing ends up coming out as a result of it, so it ends up being fine.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, in the moment, should I have dropped, should I have not? I think you were fine to drop where and when you did, given what happened.
Yeah.
I'm not really going to have any complaints beyond there. I look at Rush, and he still has beads, he still had ultimate. I'm thinking he's probably fine at that point unless something ridiculous happens.
That nobody can see, getting Rushology out of that tight spot. Fuego Maego's coming in, but there's a disparity in levels. Zatantalus is looking at him. King of Darkness is trying to get his advantage on Kill Cam Kenny, but in the back we see Disengage coming out.
Even he's like, bro, what are you
just
doing?
Looking around, Lucian Colors dashes to try to create distance, and it looks like all it's going to be is just poke. But Soul Lane here, we got an ultimate coming out.
No!
People are
no, this is what I'm calling over.
But now Colin gets his second set.
This is what I'm yelling about.
But the stun off the tier 1 ultimate from King Arthur manages to secure his safety.
That's the rare one you're good with holding on a solo.
Strudels, King of Darkness trying to see if he can get anything out of it. Trying to see if he can confirm with any of his abilities, but Kill Cam Kenny just gonna walk past him. King of Darkness jumps in, but Toaster Strudels confirms the damage. Now we see a Kraken coming out and Pyromancer to try to see if they can get any return damage. Honey Buns does secure it, and Fuego Maego's trying to run as fast as he can, but we got Demon's Release coming to try to get any damage that Kill Cam Kenny can get, but now he's caught out. King of Darkness looking to see if he can get anything from him, but even without his knockback immunity, Kill Cam Kenny's gonna get out, but King of Darkness is now stuck in the same position, trying to get anywhere he can, but
it's been a long
Mini
time.
Devlin.
That's a moment where I do say you hold on to that right side because somebody could have died there. That was an intense one. As soon as no one does, out of there. You're done. You let your chair 2 take over, even if there is action, because if your chair 2 feels like they need to give it back to you, they'll drop it at that point there. So I like some of it. I think you definitely could have broken that up into like 3 different chair 1 segments. You know, the fight over in left, nothing's happening. Okay, we transition to the fight in the right. Cool, big, awesome. All right, nothing's happened. I'm done here. Nothing's happening on right side. Whatever happens through. oh, they're going to be starting up a fight over in mid. I'm going to let my chair 2 kind of talk a little bit, give me a break, and if they need to throw it back to me, jump it back in. Because now that you've fallen into the I've now talked for a minute and a half straight, trying to like hope that something is actually really kicked up there. So talking for a very long time. Trust your tier 2. It's hard to say, you know, as first time doing it. Trust your tier 2 to give you a little bit of alleviation sometimes.
And when you talk for that long, you start to, as you listen back to that, think about, or at least hear, stuff that pops up a lot when you're talking. Hindu called them shitter phrases or shitter words. You say but a lot during your transitions. You need to find some kind of the vocal variety to make your transitions a little bit more varied and a little bit more interesting. If you're saying but once, it draws attention to whatever happens immediately after the but. But if you're saying but a lot of times, then you sort of lose the emphasis on that point.
Yeah, everybody has shitter phrases though. Literally everybody. Watch an SPL cast for an entire weekend, you're going to hear one of them develop. By the next weekend, it's probably gone, and they've developed a new one. As soon as you get rid of one bad phrase, it's going to pop back up again. It just happens. You get that one that sounds really good the first time you say it, you're like, yeah, that's nice. I'm going to keep using that. And then after about the 15th time you've used it, you go, wow, that sounds like dog shit. I'm probably not going to say that one anymore. I should probably put that one in the back pocket for a couple of weeks.
I've been working with Frog on his was interesting for quite a while. And I brought it up to him and he goes, I don't think I say that much. And then he did a cast and he DMs me and goes, wow, I say interesting a lot.
I joked about this with Aggro. We were doing a casters roundtable where we were talking about like some of our favorite moments in casting. What are some of the things that you've learned over time? You know, all that kind of stuff. And it was like, he was saying, what was one of the most difficult things for you as a caster? And everybody brought up like shitter phrases, like things that we say too much and whatnot. And you don't realize how much you say it until somebody lets you know about it. In fact, we mentioned it to Dimes this weekend that he was saying ripping through a lot. Like that was a common thing you heard in the games that he was casting was the phrase ripping through. We let him know by the end of the weekend and said, hey, like typically we try like in the middle of big events like that to not like hit you with a big one. But after like the day 2, day 3, we're like, all right, we gotta let you know. You said this way too many times, find another phrase to use. It's fine to use it once, but like it's like every single time something big happened, hit with that. Those happen through, and I was talking about how my first experience, you know, jumping into the desk segment, you know, I'm new doing desk and as a separate thing than cast and whatnot. And I did a lot. I mean, I did an insane amount of desk work with Aggro when I first started there. Like it was me and Aggro or like me and Gore. Like those were my 2 people I did the most with. Aggro specifically more than anybody else because he's like one of the best people to teach a new caster either desk or kind of cast works. He's like one of the best people to have early
100%.
along with you. And when we were doing this caster roundtable, he was like, oh, what was like one of the hardest things for you, you know, jumping up? And I told him, I said, you can attest to this one, Aggro. Is like whenever we have like bad phrases and like shitter phrases that we say all the time, not realizing how much you say them until somebody else breaks it out. And I said, I remember very specifically, you told me on one day, said, hey, you're saying this a little bit too much. You need to work on finding something else. And I had the same thing. I was like, what? No, I'm not saying it that many times. There's no way. Aggro and I got off a desk segment and he said, how many times do you think you said the word into that desk? And I'm like, oh, probably what, like maybe 5 or 6. And he looked at me and said, 14. I went, what? And he's like, yeah, you said it 14 times. I'm like, how do you know? He's like, I opened up a WordPad and I hit a button and I hit like my, he's like, I opened up WordPad and I hit the number 1 every single time you said it. And by the end of it, you had a tally of 14 times. And I went, oh, no. And so if I ever had a bad phrase mostly during desk, in cast, I don't do it. I try not to actively think that hard about it in cast. You like pick up on it. And he said that he noticed whenever he would call me out on a bad phrase, he would listen to my next couple of casts and he would recognize when I'm mentally processing something else to say because you get comfortable saying it. And that's the thing that in casting you have to break away from is the comfort zone. Once you start getting comfortable, you start repeating stuff, you start saying it all the time. Once you kind of figure out what that phrase is, your gears start turning as you get to it. You're like, and there he goes tearing through the back line. And it's like, and then he's absolutely decimating the competition. You hear like yourself like physically slow down. It happened with me on the desk because once I started realizing how much I said it, I would notch it whenever I said it. I go, oh God, I can't say this again. I have notched again. I go, oh my God, I've said it now 2 times and we're only like 4 minutes into this desk segment. And once you start recognizing it and you start, for me, I would physically open a word pad on a desk. If I had a shitter phrase on a desk segment, I would open a word pad and I would notch it every single time I said it. And my goal would be by the end of the day, if I have like two desk segments over the course of the day, like 2 different sets of desks, if I was saying it 10 to 12 times on a desk, my goal by end of day was to drop that down to like 3 at most, like down to like 2 or 3. And that's if I even want to say that at that point. At the end of the day, you're like, oh God, I hate that word. I hate the word through. I hate the word into. I hate the phrase over the top. Like I hate that kind of stuff. So,
or you hate the word JMac because at Salt I said your name, I think no less than 20 to 30 times in one cast that we did together.
It's never a bad thing to directly like reference your co-caster. It brings a little bit more like immediate like discussion. Like it makes it a little bit more kind of formal with it. Makes you feel like you're including them on it, but you don't always got to. I maybe say my co-caster's name like 3 to 4 times during a game. If I'm like not thinking about it, sometimes I'll be a more active on it. I'll like, if I'm getting ready to ask a question, I'll go, but Tretley, like, we haven't seen anything happen in 5 minutes. Like, what's the point of the game where this actually starts happening? Like, because then whenever you say their name, it gets them to stop what they're thinking about and listen to you. If you go, but JMac, I'm going to go, but yes? I could be sitting there going, okay, cool. What do I want to talk about? They got a Manticore Spike over here on this Cullen. Is he actually going to get any value of that? He has like a single ability in regular form, but he's got like 3 over here. Yeah, what's up? What's going on? I don't even remember what I was talking about. Hello, what's going on? What's happening now? Like that's what happens whenever you say someone's name in this cast, and sometimes they just like stop what they're, at least for me. I am very hyper focused in a cast. It's my biggest weakness as a caster is I have a really bad hyper fixation. When I'm on a point, I'm on a point. And sometimes I'll drive that point until a fight is happening. And I'll go, oh, it's fight time. I kind of just talked for like 30 seconds. And now I got to do a team fight too. Oh, no.
And
so for me, that
for a minute and a half.
And now I'm going for another 30 seconds in a fight. Oh, no. But that's just a personal thing because I have bad hyperfixation issues. So there you go. There's my red flag of casting. I hyperfixate on whatever I'm talking about.
Vin manages to secure the damage on King of Darkness. This tier 1 tower looks like it's going to fall. Rushology and now Hunter are being stuck trying to defend this tier 2. Hunter's got to run. He's way too low. And now the rest of the map is just open to Toaster Strudels.
I'm hearing.
A great conversion onto that Gold Fury from Toaster Strudels, and good recognition from Honey Buns to make sure that you get something out of it. I was a little scared.
I can imagine if you as the tier 1 were probably very winded by the time that was done. And you're sitting there going, God, I hope my tier 2 talks for the next 3 minutes of this game.
Kenny is a menace over here. Had he shown up maybe 2 seconds earlier, he would have run that Pyromancer pit and maybe secured more than 1 kill for himself.
Both objectives look like they were going to get stolen from either team. Zatanna's looking...
Although, I do want to, now that you bring that up, I do want to be clear. Just because your opposite chair talks for X amount of time doesn't mean you have to talk for X amount of time. That's a trap that a lot of people will fall into, where it's like, oh, well, this guy just got 50 seconds of talking and then I only talk for what, 15 seconds? That doesn't seem right. It's about balance, but it doesn't have to be perfectly balanced. Whatever fits the situation, whatever feels right, don't feel obligated to talk for identical amounts of time.
Yeah, and this one it comes down to, and I'm not like the phrase quality over quantity doesn't quite like cut it for this one. It is all about the emphasis on what your time spent talking with is. Like, you don't want to be a perfect 50-50 in a cast. And I know as selfish as that sounds, like you want it to be the exact same. You want to have as much to talk about, especially for your chair 1. Your optimal time frame of talking for you versus your chair 2 is probably closer to like 30-70, like you 30, them 70. Because unless you have, in this case, 17 minutes of non-stop fighting, you're not going to want that 50-50. You're going to want that moment. You go out there, you say everything, boom, it happened. Cool, I'm done. I'm winding down. I'm gearing up for the next fight that's going to happen because it's inevitably going to happen in a game this action-packed. When you recognize that the game has gone 17 minutes with 16 kills, we're fighting a lot. So I need to conserve my energy for when the important ones happen. and for when like the more impactful stuff actually happens through. So I think that's kind of the big one is your balance in games like this might be closer to like 40-60, but in most situations you're probably closer to a 30% chair 1, 70% chair 2. And as a chair 2, don't feel like you need to go for 60 seconds to 2 minutes, because as a new chair 2, that's not feasible. Like, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to be able to formulate 2 minutes of conversation in your head to go through. But if they pop through, you give your phrase, and then your chair 1 hears something interesting that you say. Like, for example, let's say you said, well, this Poseidon is 3 levels down, but he's going to have a much better late game curve compared to the Ratatosker, who is a much more early game style of god. All Fuego and Honeybuns need to do is just sit back, kind of farm, and wait for 25 minutes to hit, get another item or so online. And you go, well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, you say that the Ratatosker is really early, but being up 3 levels really just feels like, you know, he could be so much more impactful. This side is really just that simple for him. Then you can say, well, it's not that simple. You know, he still has to be able to survive these, and they're not really giving an opportunity. So, but given late game, this Poseidon can do more than Ratatosker. So you kind of give them that little bit of a break, but you then can open the conversation back up and kind of help them keep that point going and ask them, you know, why that point is so important. So
through the cosmos, he puts his beads, but doesn't think it's better of it. We got King of Darkness using his ultimate to hop over the wall, close distance, but I don't think he's gonna be able to get anything on Zetan. Now he's just got his Fearless coming out, trying to get anything he can with some CC, but Zetanless is gonna just hop away. Rushology now getting caught. Lucian Colors gets the stun out. Darkness all around. Gold Rushology is trying to see what he can get, but Looney Tunes is staying just far enough away. Lucian confirms the damage on Rushology. King of Darkness now stuck between a team and no one else. Looney Tunes confirms the damage, but Kill Cam Kenny putting out all those demons. Kraken to try to confirm or do any retaliating damage, but Kill Cam Kenny dodges just.
I feel like the energy is missing here where we had it before. Like, it was too much before when the fights didn't mean anything, and now I feel like there's a lack of it when the fights are more impactful, because we're later in the game, you can actually get stuff off of it. I would almost like swap the two around between like the 5-minute energy and the 15-minute energy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't mind the energy level there, because that's just an absolute one-sided like beatdown there. I think your most intense moment should have been when that Apollo and Xbalanque are boxing so close in HP. As soon as that goes down there, Tyr's surrounded by 3. Fuego walks in randomly for no reason. Like, that point hit should be a guaranteed kill to him. He's 3 levels down to the Zhonghui, who's like W-keying him at that point. So I think the energy in that moment was fine, but I agree, because you used so much in previous ones, this almost feels like you've lost some of that energy that you could have had if you would have saved it for a little bit later.
And we probably wouldn't even give that feedback at all if it weren't for the fact that we felt the higher energy before. It's just it's the dichotomy between the two that feels a little off.
Yeah.
Barely, and secures the kill onto Fuego Maego. Now we got Physics trying to look to see get a kill. Warcry comes out for the damage, tank and tower shots. Pretty healthy. Delvin's now stuck. Damage comes out, just finishes off Delvin.
That's a huge kill for Physics. That should have way more hype and emphasis to it.
Find some damage somewhere on the solo lane.
18 minutes
trying to take advantage there and taking that T1.
That's the solo kill we've been waiting for so long. That one should have way more kick to it. But again, because you went so long before, you had nothing left in the tank for that kill. This should also be hyped up.
Getting too aggressive.
But I was certainly noticing through that was Lucen is always in the exact right spot at the exact right time. Looney
getting too aggressive. King of Darkness blinked to try to confirm it, but doesn't matter. The tower and Rushology managed to just take it off. And now we're seeing her fighting for the totem here. Lucian just posting up, trying to see what he can do, but we see 5 coming to try to secure this objective. Lucian trying to just make anything he can. Kill Cam Kenny trying to push off with damage. The counter's almost full, but the full team of Honeybuns is here to try to retaliate. Physics trying to push out Kill Cam Kenny, but we now got the whole team of Toaster Strudels coming in. Kill Cam Kenny secures the damage on Rushology. Fuego Maego falls to Zetantalus. All of Toaster Strudels is now here to confirm the objective that they can, while also pushing out Honeybuns. Physics DZN's getting caught out by King Arthur, stuck, and Warcry gives him this little amount of CC immunity he can get off all of this. Toaster Strudels does not care. They are pushing forward with all the damage. Demons come out to play. Try to find any damage. King Darkness manages to run away. Physics trying to find any security under that T2 just falls to Zatantalus. And it's just not looking good. Looney Tunes coming out for blood, but just arriving a bit too...
Dropped so much faster. Dropped so much sooner. In all honesty, I don't think you even needed to pick up when Rushology got the kill onto Looney Tunes. I think you could have just let your Chair 2 go and they could have taken over for there.
Too late to the party. This mid objective is going to go the way.
So yeah, I think you could have just let the Hunters do their own thing over there more than anything, and then let your Chair 2 talk. And then once that fight kicks back up, I think you're good to pick up by that point there. But again, because you spent so much energy previous, you didn't have as much there. It's kind of the big one for that. Dives under a tower. I think out of everything in those fights that went through, the biggest emphasis point should have been the solo kill on right side, and then the tier 2 tower dive. Because everything else, I mean, this is a 5,000 lead Toaster Strudel's team. Like, they should just be winning these fights hand over fist at this point. But it's the moments of pops. It's just reiterating on other parts already.
The map state is all Toaster Strudels right now. That fight around the beacon, there's really no way you can win it if you're Honey Buns unless you have a huge advantage going into that team fight. Toaster Strudels were just able to get there a little quicker and make their presence known.
Yeah, if I'm a captain right now looking at this
Hold
scout
that for longer, right? Like we've heard a lot from Chair 1. We definitely need to hear more from Chair 2 there.
Hold that for Chair 2. At this point, is your Chair 2 because so many fights have happened and we haven't gotten a moment to dissect any of them. You can start at the beacon one because it's the immediate. Pull it back to the solo lane one. Say, oh man, Physics got the solo kill onto Mini Delvin. He's been trying to get this for so long. It's been one of the only successful lanes that Honey Buns has had at this point. Has been that solo lane. So finding that kill, super impactful for Honey Buns to try and keep one of their frontliners relevant. Then when this kill happens over in the dual lane, when it pans back to Looney Tunes dying, I think it's the Chair 1 instead of fully taking over. And again, this comes from practice and chemistry. If I'm Chair 1 and I see him go, I'm sitting there going, what? What's he doing? Like, I'm just giving him like those little pops, just like, why? Like, what's happening? Why was he there? And just kind of letting my Chair 2 still go through. Because then now, as the Chair 1, I can come back and say, bro, what was Looney Tunes doing to begin that entire fight? Like, how is that? And then you as a Chair 2 can say, well, he made that. And then you can double down and emphasize the point of that was Mini Delvin dead. Looney Tunes was not part of that fight because both of them died for their over-aggression, or Delvin died because he got tier 1. So that was a 3 versus potentially 5 that Honey Buns had lost in that team fight, and you can bring it all back through. Started out there, talk about the rest, and then how does that tie into the current fight and how they lost at that point kind of situation.
Outing Grounds game. My big thing is watching who can kill Tantalus, because
base problem is you got an arena game for your first
cast.
cast.
Tell me, all right, they know how to deal with someone.
Yeah, that's not easy. Especially for a Chair 2, I feel like a scrappier game is more difficult to get your footing.
Oh, very much. Very much. Your best cases are like what we saw at Masters with like the third set that happened, where it was like Warriors and Mambo, it's 0-5 at like 20 minutes in the game. Those are so much better for first cast for Chair 2s because you have so much time to talk about stuff. These ones, you just, if you don't know how to, not that you don't know how to do Chair 2, but if you're not comfortable in Chair 2 yet, it's so hard because you don't know where you need to keep your emphasis going and figure out how long you need to keep talking. So these are very tough games for Chair 2s and for Chair 1s because you feel like as a Chair 1 you have to cast everything happening when in reality you don't, and it's all about knowing where to emphasize the bigger kills.
Might be a little overconfident because he's also subbing in here, right? So he's got nothing to lose by just playing however he wants to play. So how can you exploit some player who might play a little bit more aggressively? And if I'm a captain, that's what I'm trying to look for right now.
Right, this Ratatouille,
confirmed Pyromancer.
Huge amounts of gold on him, but at the same time, going half tank. We see the Archdruids coming out. They're gonna take a Gold Fury too.
Yeah, sure. When you don't need to emphasize the Pyromancer, you can come back.
Tankiness to make sure that he's gonna live forever, but the damage to still threaten any of these characters.
Blink comes in, can't find the Acorn Blast, stun.
No need to jump in there. Let your Chair 2 go.
Make sure Zatantalus goes in blind as everything. Apple comes out on kill Cam Kenny, but he
let your Chair 2 take that too. Give yourself some time. Chair 1.
Away, 4 levels down.
That's nitpicky though.
Cam Kenny's just walking, but here comes Zatantalus with a through the Cosmos, misses. but gets the Acorn stun. Fuego Maego just trying to run away. King of Darkness is just knocking up as much as possible to get his teammate out. The Tantalus closes the distance, but a Lawbringer is going to keep King of Darkness safe for now.
They're so strong, man. They're walking wherever they want. They're posting up in their lanes, in their jungles. They don't care. Z-Tantalus is walking all around the map, fighting a Shibalanke all he wants, and he's not getting punished. He just walks over to mid lane and takes more kills for himself.
And one thing I'm going to say is, we got Looney Tunes is getting a little too low. Mesmerize comes out, dash, moving away, but Rushology, it's no good. He might be able to get out. We got an ultimate coming out.
Oh,
Kraken's gonna try to stun. We got the Aegis saving Looney Tunes. He's got no health. He's trying to run away, dip, duck, dive, and dodging, and he gets out just barely, at least for now. But Fuego Maego's looking for it. Ultimate Looney Tunes. Fuego Maego
Excuse me?
We got through the Cosmos.
He goes back in now. Watch this.
He is protecting his friend. Gets the kill on Rushology. Looney Tunes is overstaying his welcome on that chariot.
Get out.
And he's just gonna think better of it. And that was a nail biter. That's no way to put it, no other way to put it, because I was ready to count him out dead in so many points there, and they just couldn't confirm it. Fuego Maego had him around a corner while he was ulting away, but he just couldn't see him.
Toaster Strudels.
He's in the sky, no fight left. Drop that. Get rid of it. Let your Chansey take over. That's nitpicky again, but yeah, everything once Chariot was done, the kill happened. Everything of that is just you fluffing time.
Yes, that's all. You could even, like, that could all be decent Chair 2 stuff as well. Like, everything that just came out of your mouth, you could let Ken say that.
Yeah.
Play and protect the Looney Tunes as my man gets out with red HP. Not even sweating, though. Goes into the ult. Just rides around in circles a little bit, watching the other team going into the grave. Like, yeah, you can't kill me. It's fine.
That Kraken too, that he ageist as well. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm remembering the Great Escape as we keep talking about it.
I still can't believe it, man. Z-Tantalus runs on in from halfway across from mid lane, he slams himself down, makes sure that his friend gets out. These two are hand in hand in loving each other right now. I'm loving it, and I'm sure Toaster Strudels are feeling great about that one.
And now we see this gold difference really starting to run away with it. Almost 7,000 difference. XP is something to look at, but I always say it's gold because the difference in the power in the items, the passives, that's where.
Before we go into this, I want to get your take, because Gore said game recap about every 5 to 7 minutes, just like kind of take the temperature, give the kills, give the gold, who's in the lead, what's the map state. Where do you draw the line of, like, this is the set times that you should be telling the audience what the game state looks like?
I think it is dependent on the pace of the game. In a game like this one, I think every 5 to 7 to give your Chair 1 a moment to catch up to what's happened, to remind the audience. I think every 5 to 7 is good. When literally nothing has happened in those 5 to 7 minutes, I think as that Chair 1, you look up, you say, well, a moment ago I said it was 2,000 gold. It's still 2,000 gold. You can kind of leave it there, maybe let it go for a couple more minutes. I think 5 to 7 in a fast-paced game is a good point. I think 7 to 10 in a very slow-paced game is probably good. And then once you get to like 35 minutes, does not matter at all. Your gold and XP does not matter at all, because by 35, nearly everybody important should have full build aside from supports. I'll still do it at like 35 to 40. I'll look down and say, everybody's got their builds online, supports are 1 item away, relics are being upgraded. I'm looking at pockets to see when those potions of power and those elixirs are being picked up. That's like the time that I'm recapping those moments. But I'd say, yeah, fast-paced game, like every 5 to 7 is a good recap point. Slow games, 7 to 10, maybe. 10 is like the furthest push that I would go beyond there. And I think the biggest moments to hit on those are post-objective. Once a Gold Fury goes down, that is like, I think Gold Fury, Pyro, and Fire are like the easiest transitions you can have to talking about your golden XP lead. Once you're past 25 minutes, XP doesn't matter. Unless nobody is 20 by that point for some reason, you can just like drop XP off at like 25 minutes, and then gold becomes gold for the next 10 to 15. But I would say objectives, like for your early game, your first like 5 to 7 minutes for like the first 20, go for it. But if you can see an objective go down, you say, that's a gold fury. In your mind, you know that's like 1,000 gold for a gold fury. You can say, okay, cool, 1,000 gold. Let's look up, see what's going on. Oh man, even with that gold fury, they're still down like 2,000 gold. Like all this was just like a small stepping stone for them back in this game, kind of thing. And then they can elaborate on there. As the chair too, and this is something that we on the SPL team try to emphasize to each other, and we always have to do it every time we do a VOD review, is your chair 2 should not be the one to bring up the gold lead unless it hasn't been done in a long time, and unless they have a reason to talk about it beyond just the numerical value. If your chair 2 just walks in and says, teams have been going even, 500 gold between each other, 2 kills, blah, 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 and then you talk about something else, you just effectively take away what the chair 1 could have brought up next time the conversation gets to him and slows down, because he can go, yeah, I mean, it's 10-5, it's only a 500 gold lead. I mean, what has Honeybuns been doing to keep this gold so small despite the kills? And then they can emphasize beyond there. But if you go 10-5, 500 gold lead, but Honeybuns' farm has been so good that these kills really haven't mattered. They haven't been able to get anything beyond it. So this 500 gold is essentially useless at this point because nobody's been able to do anything with the lead. Then it's fine for your 2 to kind of bring it up. But general rule of thumb is you have your 1 bring up the kind of numerical values, what we call the on-screen values. And then your chair 2 gives you the reason why those on-screen values are so important. Or not important.
Gold, because the difference in the power in the items, the passives, that's where it really starts paying off and where you can start seeing the difference.
To answer Rumble,
he's not scared.
They're less so rules and more so guides. Like, it's not a hard rule that your 2 should never say this or your chair 1 should never do that. It's kind of just general guidelines that you go through and that you kind of pick up on in order to, further yourself in one or the other. Like, as a chair 1, it's not to say that as a chair 1, I can't do any kind of analysis. I can't, give an item build theory. Like if I see a tier 1 mace built and I already see, like, let's say I'm looking at the other side and I see Terra, Guan Yu on the same team, and I see a tier 1 mace, it's not out of the realm for a chair 1 to go, well, we see tier 1 mace build, thinking maybe that this could be a Brawler's Beat Stick, try to answer to some of the healing that Honeybuns has. They got a lot of sustain on their composition. You think this might be kind of the mindset that Tantalus goes down to pick up this item. That then opens up for your chair 2 to go, yeah, making sure to get that anti-heal online could be really big, could sway the tide of the fight, make sure that we can keep these kinds of things going through. So I think that's kind of the general rule, is like they're less so rules and more like guides to kind of help you in each of your strong suits. Because having a we call them 1.5s. I like to call Gore like our best 1.5 caster, is that he can do both really well. He can chair 1 or he can chair 2, and he can do a lot of chair 1.5 to transition to 2 in a game, but we don't need him to necessarily do as much 1.5. So it's a lot of just guideline kind of stuff. No hard set rules aside from like don't drop an F-bomb on a cast.
Right.
Like that's kind of a rule. Like you don't just start outright swearing on cast and those kinds of things. Like those are like actual rules, but like more than anything, it's just like kind of general vibes and feels. You'll take things apart with like the people that you work with. It varies from like from group to group, from SPL to SCC, from online to in person, all kinds of things like that change and vary.
If you want like an actual text document, though, I know that I just found mine. I wrote one about 2 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
If you DM me on Discord, I can send you this. I think that's Lord Lysander behind the Rumblebees Twitch. I think that Spooky Mars might also have one. I'm sure that it's obviously going to be different depending on what other people think is important and is like the most critical components to base level casting. But I think that a lot of it is going to be the same general stuff, like you said, like don't swear on cast and a lot of the hard rule stuff, and then everything else is pretty much just subjective from that point forward.
Yeah, because that's a lot of casting. It's art and subjectivity. Like, there's no like you can't do this and you can't do that because you're a chair 1, you're not allowed to ever deviate from play-by-play, and you're not ever allowed to do analysis, and because you're a chair 2, you're not ever allowed to do play-by-play. Like we don't do that because it doesn't feel organic. It feels very, very rigid in that case, and that's never what we want, is for a cast to feel formulaic more than anything else. We always want it to feel like every cast is a new cast. You don't want to fall into the trap of going through the motions. Like, well, I know I can't talk about this, I know I can't talk about that, so let's just keep it to these 3 kinds of things. So,
and if you say, just reading the chat still, excuse me, I'm choking on a Tic Tac. If you do hypothetically say a no-no word during the cast, don't draw any attention to it. Just keep going, pretend it didn't happen. I've said the F word 2 to 3 times when I was casting on the SMITE game channel. Nobody has brought it up to me, so no one will even notice. Trust me, nobody pays attention to that more than you do, so as long as you just move past it and pretend it didn't happen, you should be totally fine.
The only other person who's going to notice it is the person sitting right next to you. If it happens in a live setting with each other, they're going to look at you, their eyes are going to widen, they're going to kind of give you that like, oh, okay,
so
kind of a nod. They're like, so we're talking like this now. I think one time I've ever heard it called out, and it's when Trelly said half-ass on a cast, and Hindu just looked at him and went, we're really saying that kind of stuff now here on the broadcast. And Trelly's like, well, I couldn't think of an immediate thing in a way to like to get around that kind of thing. But yeah, if you hear somebody drop, a fuck or shit or something like that on a cast, don't draw attention to it. Also, kind of going along the do's and don'ts, this one is also kind of a don't. If a bug happens, don't say it's a bug.
Yes.
Don't draw attention to the bug. The biggest thing we had to make sure we never said during Masters was when we had a Titan bug and it's captured 2 points at once and Titan is running down mid at 18 minutes. We don't bring attention to it. We just say the Titans are going through and we pretend like it's natural. Don't draw attention to massive bugs. Even small bugs. Don't bring any attention to them. Just let them happen and let the administrative team or somebody else handle it.
And as far as bad words go, you can get away with a hell or a damn pretty consistently. I don't think that I've ever had anybody tell me you shouldn't be saying that, but anything past that, and just to be clear, if you don't know for sure, never say it. Like, that's not a gray area you want to play around in. But if you have brought it up and it's like something that you're okay with or you think that it would be good, then it's okay to say it. But don't test the waters there. You know what I mean? Like, you want to be professional, you want to keep it clean, you want to keep it available for all audiences. So if at all possible, which it should be, keep it clean, keep it professional.
Yep, keep it PG.
Of anybody just fighting physics however he can. We got the knockup coming out of physics. King of Darkness trying to run away. Is physics 1v4? He's barely taken any damage from 4 people. Shoulder charge into the tower, but now it's all catching up to him as Looney Tunes gets there. King of Darkness jumps in a little late with the knockups, and he's caught in an ultimate from Mini Delvin. And we're gonna get a kill from Zatantalus, confirming it as Fuego Maego kills Killcam Kenny, who I think got a little too aggressive. He was definitely in enemy territory behind the walls too, essentially with the Phoenixes.
Yeah, we get a little bit of goofy sometimes. Sometimes, you're up a ton of gold, you just want to run at their Phoenixes. Killcam Kenny obviously feeling himself over here. This time though, he gets checked. On the other side, Rushology is going to be able to get that left side tower, but Toaster Strudels with the advantage. The pressure that they were able to get, and it looking like no pressure coming towards them on this, they're going to be able to get this Fire Giant for pretty much free, unless Fuego has something to say about it.
Fuego Maego comes in!
That was dangerous. I was just about to say,
too close.
I like that you're holding it through this, because an uncontested Fire Giant, Chair 2, you're okay to talk through that. But as soon as somebody that might actually steal it steps up, that's when you want to try to pitch it over.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like, you were good until 25% and Poseidon is nearby. Sure, Kraken's down. You could probably feel safe there. But I've watched Divine Ruin 76 damage procs kill steal stuff. I've seen Rising Dawn 22 damage steal stuff. I've seen Gamma Ray Burst 100 damage steal stuff. We've seen steals, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. So if you see somebody approaching at 25%, you drop it for a moment. You let the chair one have it. Chair one says, cool, they've secured it, and then they can pass it right back to you. Any other situation, though, you are completely right to hold it through that fire giant. Your chair one can recap and say, yeah, fire giant goes over to these guys, is on 4. Now you push up kind of thing and talk.
Yeah, because up until that point, everything you were talking about was great. You gave a recap of the fight. You mentioned the fact that X-Ball split pushed. We don't have to go over the fire giant yet because there's nothing interesting going on. It's just people attacking an NPC at that point. And then as soon as Poseidon comes in, that's the only thing that you need to change. Don't change anything else about the way that you did that.
Toaster Strudels does secure, but I think the big issue there is if Fuego Maego had his ultimate up, he did not, unfortunate. But one of the big problems with his new fire giant is that with the Kraken especially, it's an object, so or like it's a wall essentially, so it's hard to really place the Kraken there. So it's hard to steal with the Kraken. And,
the Kraken, you can throw that thing in the fucking middle of a wall.
With that, of players trying to sit there and secure. But it looks like Honeybuns is going to try to retaliate.
With Kraken's like Vulcanol. You can throw that thing so far off into Narnia, and it's not going to matter. That's not going to stop you from throwing it.
It scares them away.
My favorite thing in Assault used to be to throw Vulcan Ultimate to the fucking waters on the right side of the map.
Just straight up strutting towards the Gold Fury. We know, having the full mini map, none of his team was there, but Looney doesn't care. He walks on
Looney
up,
never cares.
Scares them away, and they're going to think twice about walking towards that Gold Fury. Punching up around this Pyromancer, though, is 2 of Toaster Strudels for now.
And we got abilities coming out through the Cosmos, hits Huntor, and they are...
This Pyromancer, though, is 2 of Toaster Strudels for now.
And we got...
I think that's a fine drop point.
It's a fine drop point, it's just a little unclear that you're dropping there. Yeah,
it did sound like you broke sentence there. But I'm fine where the drop was. It just takes practice knowing what you want to say for your drop kind of situation. So I got no gripes on that one.
Abilities coming out through the Cosmos, hits Huntor, and they are gone. Rushology gets a return kill on Kill Cam Kenny. Physics trying to get out. A big Kraken has split up the fight, but now it looks like Looney Tunes has finally arrived in. Fuego Maego is not looking too hot, but manages to turn a corner and avoid the ultimates. King of Darkness now is just posting up and trying to get a little CC that he can to open up things for his team.
Rat in the back, rat in the back, rat in the back, rat in the back.
Looney Tunes confirms the kill on Rushology, and his buddy secures the kill on King of Darkness. A big turnaround coming around from that Zatantalus and just turning the whole fight. Just made everyone look back at him when King of Darkness sat there and pushed Looney up against a wall. There you go, hand in hand again, saving each other. And this objective in the middle, this pyramid, this pillar, what is it called? What it's called? This new stuff.
Drop. That's not important.
Pillar.
Doesn't matter, gotta drop it. And I also want to get your take, JMac, because I really like the pop of they're gone in this fight. And then I feel like after that, the energy
you played catch up. Problem, you put a lot of emphasis on the they're gone, and then you were playing catch up to the rest of the fight. Because watch,
through the Cosmos, hits Huntor, and they are gone.
Kraken, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. You're 4.5 seconds late on the Kraken. By that point, at this point, you're now recapping what's happened 3 seconds beforehand, which is online a little bit more forgivable. And at this point through, as soon as that blink happens to the backline, it's hard because you're mid-sentence. You should be yelling at what the hell, like, Tantalus, you go, your chair 2 should give you that pop, like, rat in the back, rat in the back. That's why I was saying that. I was like, rat in the back, rat in the back, rat back. Because, like, blink Ratatoskers at 25% health and he goes back in the fight. Like, that's so important. And then, if you're unsure of the name of something, unless you fully trust your chair 2 to know exactly what that name is, don't ask the name of stuff. It makes it, because if you're wrong and your chair 2 is wrong, it makes your audience feel like you don't know what's happening and you don't know what's going on. So you can just leave it the pillar. You can leave it the questions. Like, you can call it the pillar, the beacon, whatever. You don't gotta know the name exactly of it. So, because then now you've actually completely, what happens now is because you've did all of the team fighting and the team fight is over, and now you have that cooldown period from fight to move over to beacon, and you've now asked a question about what it is, the name of this thing, when it will tell you once it caps a little bit later on. Now your chair 2 has no time to get that breakdown, and you completely sideballed the entire conversation of what they wanted to have to instead bring up the beacon.
And going back to what you said about like the attention should be on Ratatosker as he comes back in, that was something we talked about in week 2. Is chair 1, you are essentially the ball in a ball sport, like soccer, football, baseball, whatever. The camera is always on the ball. Audience is always watching the ball. You tell the audience where the ball is and where their eyes should be looking. And you want to keep your one consistent narrative through the game of this is where we're watching. If Ratatosker is 13-0-9, he is the ball in almost all of these team fights unless something more interesting happens. So every time we have a team fight, we want to check on what is Tantalus doing. He hasn't died. He has 13 kills. He's the most interesting thing. We got to keep our eyes on this guy. You got to direct your attention to whatever is the most important, especially if that's a prevailing theme throughout the set. You want to build a narrative. You don't want each fight to be individual little sparse moments of action. You want to try to make it cohesive, make it all flow together. And a good way to do that in this game would be to focus your attention on Tantalus, because he's for sure the guy to watch in this game.
Yep, here's your focal point in this entire team fight through. It's like the moment he dunks in from ult, Ratatosker should be your main interest. He's off screen now. You don't know if he's backing. You don't know what he's doing. You're saying, oh, Tantalus might be going back to base. No, he hasn't gone back to base. What is he doing in this team fight? Look at him. He's all the way at the red buff at this point. He's got Blink. He's back into the back line. Already found the stun. Got the Aegis away, and now Rashad just nowhere to go.
Turns the kill on Rashology, and his buddy secures the kill on King of Darkness. A big turnaround coming around from that Tantalus.
That's some of the worst chair 1 I could have given you right there. But hey, that's just a brief. This is a brief one now, knowing what has already happened into the fight.
Right. Objective in the middle, this pyramid, this pillar.
Right.
Stygian Beacon. My brain.
And another thing for asking questions about, especially the names of things as a chair 1, it sounds bad to say out loud, but your job isn't to be smart. Your job is to be entertaining. It's okay if you don't know what the name of it is. You can even turn it into the pyramid, I don't know what it is. Whatever it's called, they're capturing it, sort of thing. Like, it does. You don't have to be right as long as you're entertaining.
Yeah. You don't need to know the name of every single thing, despite what everybody wants you to believe. You're going to get flack as a chair 1 if you sound kind of dumb, but your job isn't to be smart.
Right.
People like to say, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, that I sound stupid on cast. What they don't know is I actually know more numerical values, ability names, god names, item names, values, and all that stuff than almost anybody else who's on our casting team. But that's not my job. My job is to go, oh my god! Their job is to go, yeah, here's why he's yelling, oh my god, about that. That's pretty cool.
At least
you're
not F-Dot and you don't have a meme circulating about how you can only talk about hot dogs on the broadcast. It could be a whole lot worse for you, JMac.
Hey, if that wants to be his thread line, nah, F-Dot brought like a unique level of energy. Like, everybody has like their unique styles, and F-Dot's was the short and short and affirmative kind of statements. He wasn't gonna be he's not your rap god. He's not your Finch. Finch was, and I don't even want to call Finch your rap god, but Finch was the fast caster. He was gonna be able to tell you everything happening in the fight as it's happening because he just has that much foresight in what's going on and everything. F-Dot is the Ratatosker, dunks down, big shot, Poseidon down. Next up, Discordia on Apple, not even you. Like, he's doing short phrases with heavy pops and emphasis with it. And that was his casting style. And while as casters, you should kind of like take inspiration from them, always develop your own style. I've taken little bits from Gore. I've taken bits from Dave. I've taken bits from F-Dot, from Bart, from every single caster who's ever done chair 1. I've taken little bits from them and I've added it to my arsenal to kind of build how I want to do my thing. Because I'm not sitting here trying to replicate what this guy is doing. I'm not trying to be F-Dot 2. I'm not trying to be Dulcin 2. I'm trying to be JMac. So that way later on, somebody can go, yeah, I'm trying to be JMac, but I don't want them to be me because I want them to take inspiration from me, but not become me. And that should be your goal as a caster, is for somebody to take inspiration from you without becoming you, because you want them to be them.
And you want to be clear, you do want to take inspiration from other people, though, especially if you're just starting out, you don't have your own style yet. I had somebody ask in a previous week, how do you practice becoming a better caster as opposed to a good SMITE caster? And the best answer I had for that is just listen to any broadcasting of anything. It doesn't have to be SMITE. Just think about what things you like about it, what traits of that caster you like, and try to emulate that. If you like the way that that they make jokes on the cast, you can try making jokes and see if that works for you. If you like the way that they have those big pops like F dot does, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
then you try that and then add that into your arsenal. And then once you have
Right.
some things you like about you, then you can start finding your own style, finding things to deviate to make you a little bit original in that regard. But definitely build a base of good talent and have goals to work toward and have things that you know this sounds good when this is done, so that's why I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's the important part, is when you want to become a new caster, you, most importantly, I would say, if you want to become a new caster, figure out what you want to cast and listen to a lot of that. If you want to be a Call of Duty caster, listen to the Call of Duty casters. Listen to how they're doing things, how they're pacing their game, how they're doing their emphasis and analysis, how they're kind of dictating their game. Because if I try and be a Smite caster in a COD cast, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. I'm never going to be a Smash caster as a Smite caster. If I want to be a Smash caster, I need to learn to what the Smash guys are doing for as far as like their intricacies, and then be able to apply that. But it is correct. Whenever you find your style, you find what you like hearing from this person, and you can kind of take that and say, yeah, I can start kind of building up towards there, but also recognizing what you're doing it in. For example, one of my favorite casters right now is Dan Dawson. And if you've never heard of him, it's probably because, one, he's not American, and two, he casts darts and tag.
Huh.
He casts darts professionally and world chase tag, the hardcore parkour style of game. That's what Dan Dawson does. I don't think he was British. British. He's a Canadian, if I remember correctly. But yeah. Or was he? No, he's British. No, he is British. Why did I think Canadian? I don't know why. Yeah. You can even see his name. Dan Darts Dawson. This dude doesn't cast games. He casts sports. And he doesn't cast actual sports. He casts the wild sports. If you want to look into what Dan Dawson does, what's a good one that I could give you? God, it was if you go on YouTube, and you do World Chase Tag Record, I think is the name of it. And it's that very first video there.
What if I'm worried about switching phones?
Dan Dawson is the color caster with this one. This dude is a character. Not this guy.
Fluidity evading.
Alex Williams here. He starts by the loading bay and is just waiting for the arrival of Xavi and goes under the mountain, round towards the tilted cube and loses his footing. And now the chase is on across court as Xavi looks to hunt him down, and he is closing that gap. And I think the tag was made probably hand on hand on one of the rails there.
Chase 2.
He gets super play-by-play for moments, but then he also has like really silly moments in his stuff. I couldn't pull up an exact moment for one of those one. But for example, there's a player whose nickname is the Velociraptor. And this dude opens up his call by calling the Velociraptor, staring down his competition with his beady reptilian eyes, his long flickering tongue, and oh my god! And then he just breaks out of that weird silliness straight back into play-by-play. The way that this dude can come up with the most out-of-pocket shit on the fly and then break it right back down is one of my favorite things to listen to. And this video got me like interested in Dan and then into tag, and then I've just binged it for so much. And that's what it takes to be a caster sometimes. And sometimes the commentator will get you interested in a sport or a game or whatever it may be. Love that guy. Dan's a monster.
Shout out Dan.
Shout out Dan Dawson.
Oh,
Stygian Pillar?
my Stygian
Stygian
Beacon.
Beacon.
The darts and
brain
tag
blanked the
commentator.
second you said that, man. Okay. What I was
That's a
gonna
left
say.
field guy, JMac. I'm not
Toaster
gonna lie to you.
strudels.
Like that,
Yep.
that's some
Need to
serious
beware.
left field stuff.
Because you saw it in that fight.
I love him.
We all saw it. Roshology is slamming the damage down. His team's hurt, but him and Physics are pretty far up there. Roshology grabbing 21k himself.
Physics comes in with an
Down
ultimate
this
to try
whole
to
time.
steal Primal Fury, but Toaster Strudels gets Pyromancer with 100.
I don't think we need to talk over here.
Nah. Yeah, don't gotta pull over there. Again, that's another case where if you're on an objective, you either drop it to your chair one when the Cucullin's coming through, or you just talk over it.
Get Honey Buns gets Pyromancer, Toaster Strudels gets Oni, Physics gets a kill on Lucid, and Zatantalus confirms a kill on Fuego My Ego. I found my words.
I don't know what to say, man. There's still.
JMac, can you give me some, and obviously if the answer is no, then tell me. Can you give me some Hi-Res Studios insight real quick? I need to know if there's a sound cue in the works for the Titans being unleashed that is not Fire Giant.
According to the Trello board, there is supposed to be another sound, but it's not being played properly.
Okay, cool.
So it is, I believe, I don't want to say it's a bug, but it's unintended that Fire Giant's the noise that's supposed to be there, as far as I'm aware from the Trello board.
So, they're still
follow Kitten of Doom on Twitter. She often references back to the Trello board and the bugs.
Ding, 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 let's rumble in the solo lane. And I'm so excited to see this. This is my favorite.
Let your chair two talk over that.
Season. Just watch them take it, like,
especially
spout it out.
Because you know a fight is coming. Like, you're hyping up the fact that a fight is coming. You need to do that when the fight is actually coming, as opposed to a full minute ahead of time.
And the one thing I hope they update.
I'm letting my chair too from the moment we pan to him until those Titans clash and a fight breaks out. I'm letting him talk about whatever he wants to do.
Struggles may have gotten most of them, but we know that those.
This is irrelevant information. Number of beacons, in all honesty, number of beacons does not matter in this game. Even with all three, like 3% movement speed and 15% structure damage. Yeah, that is important, but at this point in time when they're fighting, not.
That's like a siege moment. Like, you're 40 minutes into the game, they haven't cracked the base successfully, and now you bring up the fact that, well, they've got that 15% additional structure damage, just something to fill time later, not right as we're about to see a potential team fight.
Yep.
I think Honeybuns is gonna have a bit of a hard time here trying to retaliate with anything, because their Titans now just taking damage, surrounded by 4.
Yep. You as Chair 1 don't need to do anything here.
Looks like Honeybuns are going to lose their Titan in this all-out bout, and Toaster Strudels is now walking it down. Giant sword with the judgment scales coming to your Phoenix, coming soon.
This is all fluff.
Yeah, Honeybuns.
Everything you said there was complete fluff and unnecessary.
Titan fall there. There's not really that much you can do in the middle of the solo lane over there. But now, Toaster Strudels basically have a siege juggernaut walking up here. Looney Tunes might be in some trouble over here, getting a little overconfident.
Gets caught out by King of Darkness, a blink.
And now see what happens there, Gearfried, is if you do too much Chair 2, it makes your Chair 2 feel like they got to do a little bit of Chair 1.
From Physics gets the kill. King of Darkness dragged him into the tower, and now Physics is dancing around with 3 people: the Tantalus, Devlin, and Lucian Colors. We see Honey.
No one's killing him.
Save their teammate. Lucian Colors gets knocked up by King of Darkness. Manages to find the point where he was not CC'd.
Ooh, bad Kraken.
Doesn't matter. Delvin gets the kill on Rushology, and Physics is trying to get the kill on Lucian.
No one's killing this Kakulin.
Tantalus trying to defend his friend. Delvin's managed to run back to try to help his teammate out. Physics getting caught out. Explosions from every different item here and there.
Takes 4 to kill him.
So many people dying. Kill Cam Kenny gets caught out. Physics dies, and Rushology's already dead.
Drop.
Delvin gets caught out and killed. So many people dying. It's a fraction of a second there. That was a bloodbath.
And make sure that during team fights, we talked about this last week with Gore. You want to talk about things that are happening, not player name kills player name.
Yeah.
You want to say, like, Kakulin surrounded by 4, they can't bring him down, blah, 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 as opposed to talking about the fact that in the background, Rushology gets a kill on Kill Cam Kenny or fill in the blank, whatever the names are. You want to, again, you are the ball of the team fight. And if you are not telling the audience where the ball is, if you're only reading the kill feed, then they don't know what they're supposed to be looking at.
Yep. There are moments where that will become unavoidable. For an example, one of my casts during Masters this past weekend was when the Wargs grouped up as 5 in mid, I believe it was, against Hex Mambo. And within 5 to 6 seconds, the entire team fight was over. So by the time I could even call anything, 3 people were dead. And I just had to recap, okay, they're dead, they're dead, they're dead, they're dead. Because just literally everything happened all at once. So if the entire fight breaks out, and you have this long, like this very lengthy style of team fight going on, you want more of the play-by-play versus the death-by-death.
And as the curtains fall on that fight, we see Honeybuns taking a kill advantage in that one. You can't play it like it's early game anymore. You don't have insane leads going out. All the carries are level 20. And guess what? Fuego and Hunter are gonna be slamming. Rashology's a late game Shibalanke. He's going to do way more damage than you expect. This guy two-shots you no matter what. So Toaster Strudels, they still got the gold lead. They still should have map control for now. But they really have to watch out because going forward they can't afford to play this risky. Looney Tunes got caught out by the Fearless, and that sets up for the rest of the fight. You don't have health on your ADC for the next part of it. King of Darkness going up huge with a 2-man Fearless right after and making sure that Toaster Strudels are never able to get their footing in that fight. Amazing plays coming out from Honeybuns to keep them in this game and make sure that they're not out of the running just yet.
That's all good.
And
That's all. Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. That's all good Chair 2 stuff. I will say, usually after a big late game team fight, I think that every caster I've talked to so far has said that until we see the next fight or the next objective, all of that is Chair 2 time. You can keep talking if you're the Chair 2 here for probably another 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds, however long it takes for us to see our next grouping of players or our next objective being contested.
The thing about the timing of these Titan fights is by the end of them, most likely it's going to be EFG, and that's what it's going to be happening. This next Fire Giant fight is going to be a big thing to look at, but Looney Tunes is going to look to split push while everyone is starting to dance around that Fire Giant. But we get a teleport coming out.
Back, stop the teleports. There you go.
Delvin gets there just
big play for Toaster.
Or maybe not in time enough. Fuego Maego gets a confirmed kill on Lucian. Zatantalus is finding his kill. He's trying to, through the Cosmos, lands on Rushology and confirms the kill. Fuego Maego gets another kill and kill Cam Kenny. Looney Tunes finally coming in. Doesn't look like the teleport even went through. Looney Tunes gets his Phoenix, but Zatantalus falls down. Looney Tunes gets a kill on Hunter, and now it's just seeing who can get out at this point. Honeybun's looking low, but they're up 3-2. Delvin's trying to get damage out in physics. All these abilities coming out. The hamstring, the spin to win, the slash, overhead, anything for physics. Physics gets away barely. Looney Tunes trying to find his damage. Physics gets killed by the Fire Giant. Delvin gets the kill and finds another kill on King of Darkness. This 3v2 turns into 2v1 as Fuego Maego runs away. That is so unfortunate for Physics. And I think the funny thing was it was whatever exploded. I think it was his sigil.
So I'll leave it there.
I think that made the Fire Giant mad. And
more pops, get more excited. It's a huge team fight. They're 5v4. They're finding kills in the beginning. Let that one get that energy up.
Energy's got to be up again because this is the first fight that we've really seen Honeybuns look good in for literally the entire game, and the 17-0-11 Ratatosker finally dies. We need a lot more energy for both of those two things.
Yep.
And especially with the way this fight starts, with that initial Kraken hitting home for what feels like the first time this game, definitely need more energy from that.
Yep. A little more energy, drop it a little sooner.
And we've heard the energy from you, so it's not like we think that you can't do it. Just the stuff that we heard at like 4, 5, 6 minutes, that's the energy we need for this specific fight.
It's 3v2.
I haven't heard a Kraken ever since like minute 8.
Runs away. That
was 23 minutes ago.
Unfortunate for Physics. And I think the funny thing was it was his
and also you should have been done by there.
I think it was his sigil. And I think that made the Fire Giant mad.
Nope, that's all Tier 2 work.
It flicked him. And then he took a dirt nap.
That's all Tier 2 work.
My jaw
I'll be honest, I didn't even realize that Fire Giant had gotten the kill there. I'm just going to assume that Contagion or something else got that kill. I don't care how he died, I just noticed he died.
Physics items goat. Toaster's Trudels.
You're looking around way more than I am. I'm dialed in on one player.
Okay, we got the advantage. It's fine. Looney Tunes was just swinging, man. Him and Mini Delvin were playing games in that backline. On the edge of my seat here because I'm thinking, oh no, this is the point where Honeybuns come back into the game. But right at the end there, the fight turns and they're going to get the EFG now. A turn and a turn and a turn right back into Toaster.
I don't know if they're going to get it. We got a teleport
there you go.
Coming in.
That's a good drop.
Looking to see if he can do any confirmed damage coming out with the Discordia ball. Toaster Strudels does confirm it. And now Honeybuns are on the back foot. 1 Phoenix down, 2 standing, and an EFG.
And if you can as chair 2, you'd ideally like to mention the fact that somebody's approaching. It just shows that you're paying attention to the map, that you see what's going on, and in case anybody in the audience didn't realize that, it lets them direct their attention to what could be the most interesting thing. Because the most interesting possible outcome is Discordia steps up, steals the FG, then we get a pop-off over that, and that just helps us set up for that a little bit easier.
Yep. And you just let this roll wide. Kind of just
like
further emphasize on that one, especially around like Fire Giants and Gold Furies when it's such a wide open pit. You don't care about what's in the immediate on screen, what's hitting the Gold Fury right now. You're caring about what can kill the Gold Fury, what else is up here where someone's sneaking. I see 4 on a Fury, I'm like, cool, they start the Fury, and I'm looking, I say, okay, who's nearby? Oh, there's a ROM up there. He can jump into the air and snipe. I'm going to keep my eyes on the diamond and see, is that up? Yes, snipe is up. There's always that kind of a threat. And I don't care how many people are standing there. I'm waiting for that first snipe to land to see if this is a steal possibility or if it's just going to fizzle out entirely. I see a Discordia running around. I see, okay, there's a Discordia up there. I'm keeping my eyes on that because that's the next big steal possibility. So when, especially when there's only like one person coming up to threaten, like you can ignore who's in there and care more about what's coming out around it.
Buns does know, is physically staring at it, but they're contemplating whether to engage. Wego Maego's looking like he might want it, but I just decide better of it. Only Fury falls to Toaster Strudels. Kill Cam Kenny getting pretty aggressive. The Tantalus come to support him through the Cosmos, lands Kraken as the Tantalus lands.
There's your Kraken.
Maego's getting low, but he's stuck in the circle.
There's a Kraken on a retreat call, not a big one in a fight.
Falls. Delvin gets a kill on Physics DZN, and now it's not looking good for Honeybuns as it's 5 strong EFG coming out. Ultimate from Discordia trying to get as much damage as he can.
Weird Aegis, okay.
Obliterated by Kill Cam Kenny and Looney Tunes. Delvin's trying his best.
Like I said, weird Aegis, but alright. Weird Aegis, but alright.
The Tantalus just going crazy. Gets the kill in Rashology. 18-1. This Titan's fighting for its life. King of Darkness there to try to help it out. Doesn't matter. Health is burning. It's bleeding. It's over. Toaster Strudels secures this oppressive victory on Honeybuns in an amazing game.
Okay. Yeah.
Overall thoughts, JMac?
Overall, I think for first time you both did fine. I think Chair 1 did a little too much conversation for my liking. Even in action-packed games, I try not to ever hit over the 50-50 mark, but whenever you have a game as intense as this one with as many fights happening, and when your immediate mindset thought is, yeah, I'm the Chair 1, I've got to talk about this, I've got to be the one to cast this, your mind immediately goes to every fight I've got to talk, but don't necessarily need to. A couple of moments you could have just kind of let sit over. I'd like to hear a lot more analysis from the Chair 2 over the course of the game. Fight recaps are always important. Big team fights, you always recap big team fights if you have the opportunity to do so. Small little things where we literally looked over, like, for example, the kill that happened like 6 minutes in the game, whereas Rat dunks down, hits 2, spins on 2, he's dead. There's no breakdown needed for that one. You just talk about what's going on around it, how those kills are going to kind of help the duo lane and things like that. I think overall a good first cast, but you can definitely see where the energy burnout came through as you put a lot in the first 10 to 15, didn't have a lot for the next 10 to 15. And by the time we actually get that, it's on like the game winning drive. And a lot of people, and myself included, I'm guilty of doing this too, is you save your big moment for the game winning fight, the one that's going to be the decider. You save all of your energy for that. But sometimes it just happens. Nothing special comes through. Somebody just, I don't know, walks out of position, dies to 5, and all of a sudden there's no real team fight after. Well, now you saved all that energy for nothing. And you're like, well, I gotta make sure the Titan dying is pretty cool. It's usually not most of the time. So don't be afraid to use your energy throughout the entirety of the game, but just sparingly get those really big pops up in there. Big ones to hit from there. The Ratatosker dying at 17-0 or whatever slash line he was at that point, making sure that that's a huge topic in discussion. The fact that it was a 5v4 and the fight barely went even during that one up until, or actually the fight, there was a 5v4 around Pyromancer and Honeybuns was winning until Looney Tunes got there is a big emphasis on talking point and kind of discussion there as well. Overall, my biggest kill points is this fight here. The solo kill in solo lane is probably one of my biggest pops. My biggest kind of moments are when Looney Tunes walks under tower and dies to Rushology. I think for me, the most important kill and fight in general was actually the Titan fight on right side at tier 2 tower. That should have been some of the most energy you had in this entire game, because that was Toaster Strudels with a 6,000 gold lead, a Titan pushing in tower, and nearly every one of them died to honey buns. That is probably my biggest energy cast is this one here. Because like Tantalus, Looney Tunes, they're both walking out, but huge Fearless into the back. Looney Tunes doesn't have beads. He's going to take so much damage from tower. The lights are shut off, and he's already down. They're gone a member for this team fight, and now it's going to be a 5v4 the entire way through. Fuego, the only one with ultimate, though. Meanwhile, every one of them up for Toaster Strudels. Physics now rooted out in the middle of 3, but he's so tanky. Nobody can kill this Cucullin. Another double Fearless in the back line. How are you going to stop this Cucullin? He's an absolute mammoth to the back. The stun is good, but Delvin is still found access to the back line. Nobody can stop the rampage of the Cucullin, though. Physics is having to fight against 2v1, and nobody can deal with him. Delvin has now got to rejoin the team to give them some backup. Otherwise, Physics could have turned this fight entirely back around, but now Toaster Strudels reclaiming advantage, but Honey Buns, you got Kill Cam Kenny, another big shutdown bonus for him. Honey Buns coming up big in the fight with a 2 for 3. Obviously, at points I would have probably dropped that over like Gore or somebody else, but
right. They got a little long there, but that level of energy is what we need, because again, we're preaching the underdog story. That's the first time that we saw Honey Buns look really, really good in a fight. So we want to supplement that as much as possible and make it feel like the audience understands that this was a critical moment where they might have gotten a foothold back into this game.
Yeah. That to me is the most important fight. The second most important one being the Fire Giant 5v4. Those in this entire game, I think those should have been your 2 most emphasized parts. And again, you don't have to get super loud. You just need a little bit of inflection with it. Drawing out your breath, like calling it like in physics. Like, you know, when you draw a name out a little bit longer, when you get a big ramp up, even like quick burst, like Kraken, like those kinds of things. Even if you emphasize in like really go through with like Kraken, like those kinds of things, it really draws more attention than just yelling the name of it really loudly. So yeah, for me, these 2 fights, the one that we showed right before and this one, are where you as the chair one, this is where you make your money. This is where you have got to be heard the most out of anybody else here. At this point through, I don't even know who it was that died to Fire Giant. I don't know who clipped what, who went where, what did anything. Physics, okay, so Physics jumped over. So at that point, I see that Fire Giant. I don't even realize until at that point that he even died to it. So I'm still focused on what Delvin is doing and the fact that Looney Tunes is like 5% HP during the majority of that fight. Like those are the 2 most important fights of this game, and that's where all of my energy is. And that very last fight on the left side is where I get my final hoorah as well. Like when that Kraken hits, but then does nothing, I'm upset and saying, all right, that Kraken was not it. Put the Poseidon back in the back in your pocket for a little while. Maybe we see that come out later. This game just didn't work out, even despite the comp that it was drafted into. Because that Poseidon was not drafted to do an insane amount of damage, to necessarily kill anyone, to get objectives. That Poseidon, at least to me, looking at this, depending where it was drafted, if this was a 10th, this was drafted to stop Terra, King Arthur, Ratatosker from killing me. Yeah. This is I don't want to die to those 3, so I can drop a big old circle at my feet and say, please God, leave me the hell alone. I don't want to do anything. Because that's all Poseidon is good for these days. Is he is not there to do your insane burst damage. He's not there to kill him. He is there to say, please God, don't kill me. I don't want to die, and I have a way to stop you from using all of this movement. There's better gods that can do that, but that feels like that's all he is at this point. So unless this was like a first pick Poseidon, picked way before all of this, which I doubt it was, whatever.
I'm actually kind of interested now.
Yeah, where was this Poseidon drafted? Oh God, I'm trying to figure out where all this even is. Okay.
Oh, so these are okay, so it's instead of pick order, it's which player is piloting which god. So it was 10th pick Poseidon.
So it was a 10th pick Poseidon, as I thought. When I look at that comp, I'm not drafting Poseidon I'm not drafting Poseidon before all of that. I'm drafting Poseidon into that.
Well, I mean, if I'm honest with you, JMac, I'm not drafting Poseidon at all, much less 10th pick or first pick. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no. I mean, mage jungles are still fine, but I'm not drafting Poseidon into a composition like that unless I'm doing it strictly for the cripple at that point. Because everybody knows the big meme is that Kraken's not actually a secure. You're not there to secure objectives with Kraken. You're not there to do 1 million damage with Kraken and stuff like that. You are using it as a relic burn and a cripple. Like you are there to have a cripple, to shred, shred objective is fine. Like because Trident's actually pretty good now. Won't lie about that. But this felt like as a counter draft pick over anything else.
Feedback for Chair 2.
More analysis. Give me more team fight breakdown. Give me more reasons as to why certain things are important. Game knowledge is important as a Chair 2, but game sense is the next most important thing. Recognizing at this point through, like I saw at one point in this team fight that it was mentioned that the teleport didn't go through. That's already a non-factor at that point. We saw it got stopped, and we see that it's still a 4v5 or whatever over here. So the fact that teleport wasn't used wasn't important. I think as a Chair 2 coming out of big fights like this, being able to break these down is crucial. And then when it's small individual picks, it's knowing less so how they happen and why it's important that they happen. So getting a shutdown kill on a Ratatosker, why is that so big for the teams? Well, because kill bounty, the guy is 17-0, getting an insane amount of gold and XP, and just taking the most like pivotal player off the map is gonna just like open up on more opportunities, kind of thing. So I won't slam game knowledge as much because it is a brand new season. There's a whole lot of new things, new items, new glyphs, new meta, new objectives, new things happening, new timers, all kinds of new things like that. It's much more the team fight breakdown and just the general game sense to me is the most important thing that you could offer as a Chair 2. And then being set up by your Chair 1, also important, making sure that your Chair 1 is asking you some important questions and things like that. And as a Chair 2, also just recognizing drop moments. Which I think for the most part you had. There were a couple that were, generally good on the drops. I think if I remember correctly, talking with like Gore and some of the other guys, our general rule of thumb on objectives is if it's like this, like say the objective was at 25% in this state, your Chair 2 is holding that. They're not going to care. Chair 1 will come back and recap fire. But if I see this, I'm out. As soon as that Discordia wraps around the top side at 50% on fire, Chair 2, they've got about 5 seconds to get their point through and then let it go, because I see Discordia ultimate is up. I see that they have bead still. They are beelining this fire giant. I'm dropping in case anything happens. And then me as the Chair 1, I say, Discordia throws up the strife. Unruly magic, just a little too shy from nailing down this fire giant. That's going to go to all 5 of Toaster Strudels. And what was already a dominant early game for the Toaster Strudels has completely blown the door wide open. And now Honey Buns all forced to retreat as Toaster Strudels backs out. And now your Chair 2, they can go right back to the point they were making before. And then until that next team fight hits, until that next fight around the Phoenix or whatever it maybe happens, or next objective goes, this is your time to shine. You say, well, they're 8,000 down. They've got a Discordia here that's got an insane amount of defense as a mage. Mifflin's favorite thing to do at this point, and it's not a bad thing by any means. It's something that he does. It's something I sometimes forget to point to him to do, so he'll just do it. At this point, besides this objective, you talk about the siege defense, because you don't talk about siege defense until fire giants are being taken. That is your perfect opportunity to say they have 2 traditional mages. They have a Poseidon. They have a Discordia. There is no way the minions should be getting in here easily. They've got a Shibalanke to turn out the lights and disrupt the team fight. They should not be fighting outside of Phoenixes like they are right now. And then I would have said should not be fighting out of Phoenixes like they are right now before the dunk ever came through. As soon as I see the Ratatosker goes up, I'm dropping it again. Tier 1 takes over at this point through. So,
and if you're not sure about what to talk about for siege defense, the most important things are for the defending team. How good is the wave clear? Are you safe in clearing the wave? Can you do it from a distance? Do you have to get too close to the enemies to do so? How is the engage look for the sieging team? Do they have to invest some kind of obscure resource to get there? Or do they have like a decent avenue in where they can use something non-committal, fish for a little bit of damage, and then walk back up a second time? Things that like change the way that the landscape of the team fight goes are going to be things that are worth bringing up. Do you have like a Terra Hades where it's fine base kit, but really it's only the ultimates in these team fights that you're looking at, so you got to go all in on all these fights? Or are you going for like a Thoth where you're just poking from distance, and then if you get the fight, then you see the final judgment come out?
Yep. Those are pretty much the key parts, is how does the defense look versus how does the offense look compared to the opposite side? Are we enhanced fire giant time frame, or are we pre-enhanced fire giant? Makes sieges that much easier because then you don't need a minion wave. You can just walk in and get the job done. Outside of that, I think for like first time, I would say within like first 5 to 10 casts, this is still just fine. I think your tier 1, you can definitely back off a little bit. Don't need to cast everything. A little bit more energies in the big moments. And more questions if need be. Like, don't ask like every time like there's downtime, ask a question, but building up story and conversation or asking questions is definitely a good way to fill a lot of the in-between time. Even if there's a ton of fights, like these are the fights you really cast for. You're not going to need to cast every single thing that's happening, especially if it's like, 3 versus a Discordia in mid, like Disco's going to die. Your chair 2 can kind of cover that, so you can just come up with other conversation pieces at that point. And I think cutting off your own point is easier said than done, because you might feel that you need to get that point out there. But you can even just give it with a hold that thought, or you can even just like immediately transition out of that one and whatever it may not be. There's a whole lot of ways that you can try and cut from a team fight or cut to a team fight. Like if I'm doing chair 2 at this point, I'm still holding. And as soon as Looney Tunes steps into this Phoenix, like he's standing by Looney Tunes, the Titan is moving forward. Honey Buns, they're starting to mount their defense. But now here, technically I should have been out a little bit sooner. But your chair 1, that's his pop moment. As soon as that Fearless happens, your chair 1's getting their pop, and your chair 2 should be out at that point through.
And that the chair 1 pop can be like, whoa, Fearless, and then go into the fight from there. Like maybe it's because I'm a chair 2 that I'm biased. I think that you should have as few times in a cast where chair 1 has to talk over or through the chair 2. I would ideally like to think that you could set up probably 75 to 80% of team fights as a chair 2 where it's like you give a lead in to the chair 1, but you are going to have times like this where there's nothing going on, they're walking up, and then whoa, suddenly blink, and that's when you come in as the chair 1. But unless there's some big, sudden, unexpected moment, you, in my opinion, would ideally like to have the chair 2 give some kind of handoff to the chair 1 before you start covering the action.
Yep. If it happens in the middle of a sentence like that, where like nothing happens and all of a sudden everything happens, it's fine if you're still talking and your chair 1 just kind of interrupts over. Most times you don't want your chair 1 interrupting your chair 2, but that doing online and on a delay whenever you're having to watch over a stream, like you don't know if one guy's seeing it a half second before you or, a second before you kind of thing. So it's harder to do online, but like generally you don't want to like run over the person that's talking. But there are moments like this where it would be like Gore wouldn't be like mad at me that I just started yelling over him out of nowhere kind of thing. In fact, he probably stopped what he was doing and go, whoa, hold on. Like you'd probably join in there kind of situation. So yeah, don't be afraid where if a big moment happens, just even fade out your sentence. You don't even have to complete your sentence. If you hear them yelling, that yell is a perfect time for you to just completely dead cut your mic almost.
Yep. Closing thoughts, JMac, before we send it off for the night. We've been here for a bit, and I want to make sure you get any last chance that you got.
Yeah, no, I think just the best way to get chair 1 practice as a chair 1 is to just cast a lot of team fights. That's the easiest way to get better at team fighting, is to just sit down, watch a ton of team fights, cast a lot of team fights, just keep getting that kind of practice through there. And then the other thing, as mentioned kind of way earlier at the beginning, is just have a bag of questions ready to go, because when you do inevitably get some downtime in some of the slower games, you can come back to it. Listen to what the desk also says before and be able to pull points from there. For example, if they say, well, Honey Buns is a late game scaling composition, as long as they're within like 5,000 gold, 25 minutes into the game, there's a very easy chance for them to kind of get back into this one. Tosha Strudel's team comp kind of falls off. Let's say we get to 25 minutes and it's still dead even, at this point. You can say, well, going back to what so-and-so said on the desk, this is a late game scaling composition for Honey Buns. They've done the hardest part. They got through the early game. They weathered through the storm. Now can kind of go through it. And that's an easy transition point that one can start, two can finish. And then now all of a sudden, hey, we're back in the action. We can keep talking about what's happening on the screen instead of what's happening off in the void because nothing cares at that point. So for chair one, if you want to get better at team fights, just practice those. Practice your ins, your outs, slowing down, finding points that you want to emphasize in a team fight. Because if you're just going a mile a minute on every single thing that happens and trying to keep up with the action, that's where it starts to get a little bit tougher. So recapping a fight while it's happening is one of the biggest pitfalls of a chair one caster. It'll happen all the time where you're watching a game live, but it feels like you're falling behind because you tried to finish a point somewhere else and you couldn't finish it, so you go back to make sure you finish it, and all of a sudden now you're 3 seconds out of your team fight, and you go, oh, well, Kraken happened 5 seconds ago. That's cool. And you're like, wait, well, now I'm 6 seconds behind what already has happened beyond that point there. So just practicing your team fights. In all honesty, if you wanted to, just go find a VOD or anything like that. Go find a bunch of videos with a shit ton of team fights in them and just practice them. Just keep practicing those kind of things, practicing those. Energy level, what feels important, what's not important. Those kind of come more so with game sense and knowing how much weight is on a single team fight. I always like to put on emphasis when we're getting to like Phoenixes and Fire Giant Dance at like 35, 40 minutes. It's like all it takes is that one fight, that one ultimate to clip through, the one final judgment to hit a carry, for one tank to step too far out of line because the hunters and the mages are online. Those kinds of points feel like they're filler, and they are filler. Those are strictly phrases that I use and other casters use to fill time until something fucking happens on screen because nothing is going on for the last 8 minutes, but we're that deep into the game that a single team fight can literally win you the game at that point. So we are just killing time, waiting for something to happen, but we're also setting up for the, if that one does happen, that's the one. And if the fight breaks out the way that it should, that's game over. And we're ready to make that the game emphasizing call there. But also if it doesn't, you're ready for the next one. You're letting it kind of fizzle a little bit and then you're getting set up for the next kind of one. So for chair one, just cast a bunch of stuff. Keep just watching a bunch of games, kind of seeing how metas develop. With new metas, it's tough to kind of determine what's more important than other things, but it just takes a little bit of time. Chair two, let's get some game sense, get some analysis, find easy talking points throughout it. Look at compositions. It's the easiest way you can find talking points during dead time is saying, oh, well, this is a Ratatosker who's a level and a half up, or like this is a Bakasura. Like, oh man, this Bakasura is 2 levels down. That's an early game god. That's a god who should be power farming these first levels. Why is he behind? This is not looking to be a good sign kind of situation. So comps are the easiest way to kind of get yourself bailout points, and then team fight breakdown is going to be your next easy kind of swing after that to make sure that you are ready to go for some of those. During the downtime, the world is your oyster. Talk about whatever you want that you feel is important at that point. And don't be afraid as a chair two. If you feel like you've been talking for a minute and a half, nothing's happened, that's your time. At that point, the chair one is borrowing moments from you to kind of give you your time to shine. Because chair one's most important moments are the team fights.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for us, JMac. Thank you for coming on and helping us out here. For those of you watching, we don't have episode 5 scheduled yet. I think that I'm going to try to either get Mifflin, Trelly, or Spooky Mars for episode 5, just because we've had a lot of chair 1s on recently, and I do want to get some more niche feedback for the chair 2s, and obviously keep the feedback as varied as possible, get as many different people cycling through as possible. But thank you again to JMac for coming out. That is going to do it for us. I have been Kaizo. I've been joined by JMac. Keep an eye on the Discord, and I will probably give some kind of notification in the next couple of days after I find out who our next guest is going to be, when that's going to be at. But until then, everybody have a good night, and I hope you guys learned a lot from this stream.